gonna give like a brief rundown of Cuban Missile Crisis. Bill, apparently he did some like research and he's excited about.
I did
a deep dive.
Nice. I'm excited too.
But yeah, he disappeared. I don't know where he went.
Bill swam in the Bay of Pigs.
That was good.
That was really good.
I got the ski urchin stuck to my foot.
Welcome to Movies, Film, Cinema, your premier movie podcast where we deep dive into the world of movies, dissecting the latest blockbusters, celebrating classic films, and exploring the magic of cinema. Join us as we discuss everything from Hollywood hits to indie gems, all things movies, under one roof. Pop some popcorn, close that disc tray, and enjoy Movies, Film, Cinema.
Welcome everyone to Movies, Film, Cinema. I am your host, Big Bird, where we talk about movies, your premier movie podcast. We love movies more than Luke Skywalker loves blue milk. I'm here joined with my co-host today. I've got Billy V, Tyler the Mime Doctor, and John the Man Balaban. Hey, how's it going today, guys?
Good.
It's okay.
It's okay? It's okay. Well, you know why it's okay? It's because you're far away from us. We wish you were here, Bill.
Oh, yes.
I'm here. I'm right here.
Well, hey guys, today is the first time that we actually get to sit down and talk with John. John is an old friend of mine. We used to be co-workers. We used to install custom home theaters together.
We did.
He is actually one of the main reasons, if not the main reasons, why we have this podcast.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's okay. So a little background about me and John. Like I said, we used to work together, but during our, I guess, working days, we would be stuck in a van together for sometimes hours at a time. You know,
yeah.
It brought up a story previously to us recording here about us going to Breckenridge, but as an example of kind of like, hey, this is what we should do, man. And like really passionate about it.
Oh, yeah. It's like every day just talking movies. So.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
But essentially, we would sit there and just like, hey, have you seen this movie? Hey, have you seen that movie? And we would just like kind of like really nerd deep dive into movies.
This is why you need to see this movie.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing I really liked about your perspective on movies was like, and kind of was like, oh man, you would really love My Friend Bill. But your perspective of like, yeah, that's a good movie, but this one fact changes the whole movie. And you're like, holy crap, you're right. So one thing I was originally, wanting to do was like, hey, I'm the big movie buff, I see everything, kind of guy. You're like the true cynic of like, like
Yes.
of like movies and media and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and you're very knowledgeable on specific actors and directors and stuff like
thank
that.
you.
Yeah. And then Bill being the movie guy, I was like, oh, perfect. The three of us will be great. And then we had a scheduling conflict originally. And then Tyler, I was like, dude, this is a whole nother angle. We've got Tyler, the Mime Doctor here, who isn't like a big, movie person, but he's got such like unique perspectives and like has like these one-liners that just kind of like, oh yeah. So
I don't know anything.
yeah. But man, I'm super excited. We actually have all four of us on the show today. John, I figured because we didn't get the chance the first time around, do you mind if I'm just going to ask a couple questions just so the audience can kind of get to know you a little bit? What's your favorite movie, man? Or what's a movie you like to watch like all the time?
This is a tough one for me, but in recent years, I've finally decided to lock it down on one answer just because I get asked so often. And I think it's going to have to be Terminator 2.
Terminator 2?
Judgment Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
With good old Arnold, yeah.
It's honestly one of the first movies I can ever remember seeing. I'm pretty sure my family showed it to me way too early, and the first Terminator. But the second one just stuck with me forever. Like, I don't know why I saw myself as a little John Connor growing up and everything. And then
I could see you being that rebellious
guy.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then going back and rewatching it time and time again, countless times per year. I just find new things like little bits and pieces of magic James Cameron pulled off or things that the actors did that you don't see in other films, or the way like the T-1000 walked is a huge thing, that how it like had to collaborate with the CGI, which was something that was new to film back then.
Right.
And so there's so many things that were just so awesome about it, and it still holds up to this day better than most action movies. Plus, you have Arnold taking a knee on the front of a semi-truck and just unloading an entire M4 round or magazine into the cab. That's pretty cool.
I
So
would agree. I know you're a big James Cameron nerd in general.
I am,
big Avatar guy.
I am.
Have you ever been to, they used to have it back in the day, but the Terminator 2 ride at Universal?
No, I had never gone back then. I did go see the Avatar stuff that they have at Disney World now.
Dude,
that's
awesome.
super cool. It's my favorite part of my whole trip out there.
Really,
But,
at Disney?
Yeah, it's in the Animal Kingdom of all places. They dedicated a whole part of the park to Pandora. It's really cool if you get to stay past nightfall, which they try to kick you out. But if you stay late enough, it goes all like bioluminescent the way it does in the movie and everything. So the whole park you're in looks like Pandora. It's more convincing at night because of the shadows and the lighting and everything than it is during the day. It's pretty cool.
But they don't want you to see that, huh?
Well, the park closes and they got to kick everybody out.
So hide in the trash can.
Depending on what time of year you go there, the sun might still be well in the sky when they kick you out. So that's a little tricky to navigate, but it's cool. It's very cool.
Is that a movie? Have you seen it all, Tyler? Is Terminator 2?
You know, I have never seen either of them.
Ooh, dude.
So,
okay.
So I imagine that we'll probably watch those.
We might have to go on some adventures.
We
with
might have
films.
to.
Yeah. So you've seen Blast from the Past before you've seen Terminator 2.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Speaking of Blast from the Past, we'll dive into it, but that's today's episode, guys. Is Blast from the Past. So before we actually dive into the movie, I figured we can take a small little ad break. We'll come right back, and we'll see you guys soon. Okay.
The thrilling saga of adult responsibilities. What are they and what do they mean? Behold, a dreaded mountain of dishes that haunt every adult on a daily basis. Watch in awe as we are consumed in mountains of dirty laundry. Marvel at the weekly task of arcane lawn clipping, for in the grand adventure of adulting, every chore is a daunting quest. Why must we chores as adults?
Welcome back, guys. That was a fun ad, wasn't it? Well, hey, today we're talking about Blast from the Past. Hey, speaking of Blast from the Past, somebody's looking very dapper today.
Oh, thanks.
I agree, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, Dapper Dan.
Some people may not know this a lot about Tyler if you don't actually know him in real life, but like, dude, every time like we go to the airport together or I see you out, like you're just always like suited up and looking like super gentlemanly. One of the reasons why I want to look at this movie and choose this movie is because I'm like, you look like a blast from the past. Like you're one of those people who are like not only like kind of like the main character Adam, who is like, you know, just like very gentlemanly and like very reserved, but like you dress a certain way, you look, you know, as they would say, to the nines. So I really hope that you as a person who doesn't really normally watch movies would also just kind of self-identify with this movie just because of the time period. And I know you like historical stuff. Off camera, Tyler just showed me a jacket he came in wearing. It's a World War II
Great coat, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did you want to talk about that just a little
Is that what
bit?
you said?
Oh, sure. Yeah, well,
wow.
I mean,
That's cool.
I didn't find it in the field.
Sure.
Took it off a dead man.
This is in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Except these two holes in the back.
Once I shook the bones out.
Right,
Yeah.
so the guy wasn't, but the coat is. It was just a thrift store find, but I'd never seen a great coat at a thrift store. That was bizarre.
It's in really good condition too, which is kind of cool.
That's nice.
I dress like this because work in basement archives.
Yeah. Number one guy.
Number 4.
Guys, I just want to purely ask you, like, what do you guys remember about this movie? Bill, if you maybe want to start us off there.
Yeah, honestly, it's more just the overall, like, I guess, fleeted memory of it being fun because it's a Brendan Fraser movie.
Did you watch this in the 90s? Did you watch this when it was new?
Like, I was only, it came out in 99, so I was only 11. So I didn't see it when it came out in theaters, but I watched it later. But I was a teen or whatever when I saw it. And honestly, I want to say 2 scenes I remember from the whole entire film is when they're in the hotel and he's covering his mouth because he didn't brush his teeth.
I would have left it at the front desk, but it's very valuable. Now take it.
I can't take that. It's yours.
Take it, damn it.
Okay.
Why are you doing that?
Because I haven't brushed yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
And then the ending where Christopher Walken is doing his long steps, pacing out like a new bunker. Like I remember the film being fun and whimsical, and I always have this memory of enjoying it and knowing it's a good movie. But after watching it again, I realized I never actually remember the whole movie. It's just those 2 scenes. But I guess that's enough to describe like how weird and quirky the film is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way about it. I had very vague memories of it. Like, I remembered an elevator coming through a floor and things like that.
Father.
Yeah, exactly. Like a weird prophet situation going on. But that was pretty close to all I remembered beyond what you just described. And so when I went into it, I wasn't intending on like taking notes. I was like, I just need to watch this again from an enjoyment standpoint and just see what it does to me again. Because I remember loving it, as you said, but just didn't remember many details at all. And I think the connection to Encino Man makes it a little confusing for someone my age too, who didn't watch both of them. I'm like, is that scene in this movie that he came out of the ground, or is it in that movie that he came out of the ground, or is it in that other movie where he went back under the ground? You know what I mean? Like, the whole Brendan Fraser connection to underground.
Well, that's very interesting you say that, because there was an interview he did where he's like, I forgot the exact terminology he uses, but like he's the Babe, brand new Babe. He's, George of the Jungle, which was a famous movie that he was in as well, where he, is taken from one, point in time, thrust into modern society. Yeah. This movie, he was from the past and thrust into modern society. Yep. And then, forgive me, I'm trying to think of, yes.
Encino Man.
Encino Man, yes, thank you.
From an even further past
yes,
era.
Exactly, thrust into, so the guy is time traveling.
And then the Mummy is the opposite. He's from a past era thrust into a further past era.
Correct, yep, for sure. How about you? Did you, Tyler, did you find anything that you like remember about this movie, or was this like a first time watch for you? Or?
I'd never seen it.
You've never seen it? Okay.
No, I'd never seen it. I'd heard the name, but I'd never seen it before. So it was kind of fun because some of the more modern stuff that they portrayed in the city and everything, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. It was very 90s in that particular part,
Yeah,
for sure.
Like I remembered when, the suits were, very dark and people would wear the black shirts and stuff. Yep. And I'm pretty sure that whole 40s, venue was right when they had the, like the swing revival or whatever it was. Remember that? It was like,
I wasn't there, but.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
No, understand joke.
Yeah.
But like, like bands like Cherry Poppin' Daddies and Squirrel Nut Zippers, and there's one more that I can't remember the name of. I think they were even more popular, but I always thought that was really fun when they but that was very short lived. It was only for like a couple of years that was popular again.
Sure.
And so I wonder if they made this like right in the middle of that. I don't actually know. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
But that stuck out to me. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then the fact that, when I'm like, oh, well, he'll know these dance because they were before him, and
right.
Not only, his mom gave him a dance lesson every day or whatever, but, the fact that he would know these dances because they were some of the only things that had happened before him.
Right. For me, I self-identify with this movie. Grew up in a military family, so it was very always like, yes sir, no sir, very like prim and proper, and always listen to the parents and tell them, do exactly what they tell me to do. So there's a very maternal, paternal, side to Adam where he's like, forced to kind of just listen to his parents because they're the only source of information that he has. So
not only source of information, they were just the only thing he had. It's all he knew.
My mama said.
My mama said.
It's like Plato's cave where all they know is the shadows, and then they come out and see the real world. And fortunately, he does better than they do in that tale, but or in that allegory. But
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point.
The cave,
But the other thing, I guess, something that I self-identify with is the whole dating situation with, I guess it's Eve and Adam, in this situation where she's just a very like, I'm an independent woman, and he very much wants to court her in the very traditional way. Yeah. I think I struggled with that, a lot in my own personal dating life. Is like, but I have to be chivalrous for you. And
sure.
Like, nowadays when I'm like, I can take care of my damn self,
Right.
So, but yeah, this movie for me, I mean, I've watched it multiple times over the years, so this isn't like a super like raw and unfresh one for me. This one is like probably a rewatch every like 4 to 5 years. So, but this
really,
for sure. But
is it just because of that like that history in the past and everything? It just kind of speaks to you. And...
It does. Me being the big history guy, there's a lot of things, and we'll dive into this about like kind of the background for this, but. There was a lot of historical background that surrounds this and is the antithesis for the premise of this movie, that I was like, okay, I get that. That's pretty cool. And it's pretty plausible when you consider, certain aspects of the movie. So, sure. But yeah, so moving forward, I figured we go over, something pretty quick and dirty, more or less for the audience at home. I figured we'd kind of go over basically who directed it, some of the actors in it, and stuff like that, and just kind of roll through that really quickly, just so we can kind of give those people who haven't seen the movie or just kind of had seen the movie and just, want a refresher on kind of who's in it and what's going on before we deep dive into kind of the whole thing. There's some interesting tidbits and facts that I have here for us, and please feel free to chime in at any point in time. Who directed the movie was Hugh Wilson. He was really kind of known for, before this movie, was kind of known for The Police Academy. Another notable 90s movie that he's known for is Down Periscope. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one.
I actually haven't seen either of those.
Oh, dude.
I haven't seen Police Academy.
Same, like Police Academy is like famous, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I think I've seen like pieces of it, but
yeah, Police Academy I haven't seen, but Down Periscope is like one of my favorite like 90s comedies.
I'm gonna have to check it out then.
Oh, dude, it's so good. What's his name from Frasier is the main character. From
Frasier himself?
Yes, correct.
Oh, really?
Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer, yeah.
Yep.
He's the main character. He's the captain of like this submarine that they are trying to kick him out of the Navy. So they give him like this crappy like World War II submarine, and he's got like a ragtag bunch of like Navy people.
Okay.
And it's very, very, very funny.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. But those are the two things he was known for. And then Brendan Fraser, the man of the hour, as it were, he was known for kind of before this, like one of the major films was Encino Man. He, as we talked about, he was a caveman, come back, and came back to modern day, quote unquote, modern day in the 80s. Interesting fact for some of you guys, if you watch the Pauly Shore movie Son-in-Law, he's in a cameo scene in there, as well as the other Pauly Shore movie In the Army Now. You can see him in some of the scenes in there. The other major movie that he was in.
You didn't even drop the character that he plays in the Army Now. He is. Has it been retconned at this point that he is actually Link, or has it always been that he's Link? I
believe that he's always been Link, but I mean it's been a long time since I've seen In the Army Now, but in my notes at least I have him.
Yeah.
As, but did they retcon it, or from the get go has it always been?
You know what?
Like
I'm not too sure about that honestly, but if there were a whole World Wide Web website and Google, so we could probably look that up.
And
AI for sure. But viewers, if you want to let us know, hey, you can correct us in the comments, and I might send something your way. So. The other movie that he's really known for, and we talked about, was George of the Jungle, and lastly was Airheads. And for you physical media people out there, if you can find a Blu-ray copy of Airheads, that's $150 in your pocket for you. So,
I got one.
I was going to say, I might have to.
I
might have one.
DVD copy,
the DVD copy is normal price, but if you have the Blu-ray copy, that's $150 in your pocket.
I gotta check my stuff. I might have it.
I might have a Blu-ray of it.
I started buying up a bunch of Blu-rays before I even had a player for it, just so I would have them. And Airheads was always one of my favorites.
Oh, dude, I love Airheads. I have it right over there, actually.
It's so awesome.
Unspoken gem, right?
Oh, it absolutely is. Anytime somebody hasn't seen it, I'm like, what are you doing with your life? Go see Airheads. It's awesome.
Yeah. Airheads is a movie with Brendan Fraser and
Steve Buscemi.
Yep.
Adam Sandler.
Yep.
There's tons of other people in there. Judd Nelson pops up as the
He's a police officer, isn't he?
No, I think he's the real one.
He's an executive.
Yeah, he's
or
the
something.
real like record exec guy from the studio or the record company. Yeah, it's a great movie about guys trying to get on the radio, and so they hold up.
So they hold a radio station hostage.
Yep.
I do remember seeing
have you seen it?
the poster for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. It was
awesome.
like mid-90s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I want to say so. Yeah, I don't know if I could date that one, but
Airheads was 1994.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly. In general, 1999 was great for Brendan Fraser. He had 3 movies that came out that year. He had Blast from the Past, The Mummy, which hopefully we get to talk about.
Fantastic.
I know this is something that you're going to absolutely love, Tyler, because you're a big like Indiana Jones and like adventure person.
It looks cool.
Oh yeah, so cool.
It's like probably one of the only things I can think of on the level of like the first Indiana Jones.
Really?
Like not that it's the same type of movie in any way. There's a lot of differences, but for the sense of adventure and an awesome history aspect of it. I don't know that there's anything else I really put in that same category.
Is it as good as Romancing the Stone?
I'm trying to remember if I've even seen that. I don't know.
Have you seen that?
We talked about that last podcast.
I don't think I've seen it.
As soon as I thought about that, I was like, I think we've talked about that, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I want to see that for sure.
We should watch it for this.
Is it in that same kind of vein?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
then.
no, they're well done.
Dude, I need more like Raiders of the Lost Ark in my life, and I can't just rewatch that as many times as I do.
you will enjoy these two.
It's excellent. I'm excited.
That first one, and then I think the second one is called Jewel of the Nile. I think.
See, I've heard both of these titles, but I've just never seen them. Yeah. Okay.
It's bizarre that there's any movie that I've seen that other people haven't.
Sure.
That makes no sense.
Yeah. I like it.
Brandon, to piggyback off of you, just to really set it in stone. Get it, Tyler?
No.
Yes.
George of the Jungle started filming in 1997. Blast from the Past began filming in January 1998. The Mummy began filming in May of 1998. And then Dudley Do-Right was in late 1998. So Brendan Fraser back to back these films.
That's insane.
Right. And
especially the caliber of movies a couple of them are.
For sure. And all three of them came out, and the ones you just described in 1999. Interestingly enough, Dudley Do-Right was also directed by Hugh Wilson. So this Blast from the Past is the first time that Brendan Fraser and Hugh Wilson hook up. Second time is Dudley Do-Right.
Nice.
I was just going to say, there was a Dudley Do-Right movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I have a very fond memory of watching it with friends back in the day when we were like still kind of kids, like maybe on the verge of kid to teenager age, somewhere in there, and just laughing like all night long to that movie. And I tried to watch it a few years ago again, hoping to get the same type of excitement and bring me back to that memory. And I don't know if I just didn't get it in my adulthood as much anymore or what it was, but it didn't. I still liked the movie, but it didn't do the same thing that it did that first time. It was probably the group setting I was in and everything that helped make it what it was. But yeah, one of my favorite movie watching instances is actually that silly enough movie.
Some like Rocky and Bullwinkle VHS tapes from the early 80s.
Yes.
So I certainly remember the source material, but
yep. Yeah, good stuff.
I was going to say Brendan Fraser was the man, 1999. Is there any other Brendan Fraser movies that you guys, like, I guess, really identify with or that really enjoy? I know that he's kind of had like a recent renaissance, you know, with him.
That's cool.
Bill, I know you had some history on that. Was there any like Brendan Fraser films that you enjoy or, kind of stick out for you?
I mean, dude, it's all of them, man. Encino Man obviously was a go-to growing up, but I mean, yeah, there's nothing more to add. That I watched all of them. They're great. It was the 90s were definitely the characters that Brendan Fraser played. That just describes the 90s.
Oh yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
For me, even though we talked about The Mummy a little bit, The Mummy 2 kind of stands out for me as well. And I think for me, it's the reason I'm pretty sure it's the first movie I ever went to a movie theater alone and sat and watched.
Oh, that's sad.
I just remembered I was so excited. Well, it wasn't really sad. I lived across the street from one, and I just randomly one day I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go because I had been really anticipating that movie. And like back then when I was a kid, I got so excited for movies that when I went to see them, I was in this like headspace where I was like, I can't believe I'm actually watching this now. And so that's one that I really remember getting home and being like, I finally saw it, like so excited. And it did not disappoint in any way. It's a different beast than the first one is, so it's hard to compare the two. But yeah, that movie is a major standout in my mind.
That's awesome.
Hey, yeah. I blindly enjoy all three of them.
I haven't actually seen the third one, so I couldn't.
With Jet Li, come on.
Yeah, I know, and I love Jet Li too, but the replacement of Rachel Weisz. Well, I was trying to think of the character's name.
Yeah,
but I can't. Oh, yeah, I can't remember.
The librarian.
Now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm surprised, honestly, Bill. You being an A24 guy, you didn't say The Whale.
I did see that.
You saw The Whale?
Yes.
Dang, dude. Yeah, those are like random ones that like not a lot of people have seen. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but positive, but I still haven't seen it yet. So yeah. I got to get that taken care of at some point here.
You definitely have to be in the mood for that type of movie.
Well, I'm really on the Brendan Fraser comeback thing though, so I want to support it. And so like I didn't catch it in theaters, but I do want to see it.
Anything he touches, whether it's drama or comedy, I think it just works. Like I was just telling Brandon, I just watched The Brothers with Peter Dinklage and Brendan Fraser, and his character in it's so absurd. It's I think it's only streaming. I don't know. I don't think it went to theaters at all, but The Brothers.
I think I saw one ad for it, but I haven't caught it yet.
It's great. Another good Brendan Fraser gem that's come out in the last handful of years.
Hopefully with plenty more coming.
Yeah, for sure. Well, his co-star plays opposite of him is Alicia Silverstone. Her big film debut was The Crush, which came out in 1993, but a lot of people kind of know her from the movie Clueless and her famous line, "As if." Have you heard that phraseology from her before, or from that other people?
I do remember that. That's one I've not seen either. But I remembered her when I saw her in this movie. I was like, oh yeah, she was real popular in the 90s,
For sure. In that Clueless movie, I believe it's Paul Rudd is in there.
Yeah,
and
I think so. Yeah,
he looks exactly the same.
Yeah, right. He hasn't aged.
Yeah, he hasn't aged a bit.
30 years have gone by, but he hasn't aged at all.
Yep, exactly. The other thing that she's kind of famous for, and kind of will be a theme we'll see these actors here, is she was famous for being Batgirl in the 1997 Batman and Robin. Didn't get to chance to mention it, but Brendan Fraser was in the unfortunately canned movie of Batgirl that during his Renaissance, so he's also part of the Bat universe as well. Sissy Spacek is Brendan Fraser's mom. People may know her from Carrie, from the original Carrie back in the day. She is like a standout actress. She has 3 Golden Globes, a BAFTA, 3 Emmys, a Grammy, and SAG Award. Holy crap, is she really, really talented. Dave Foley is also in this. He plays the gay best friend.
Every time I see him, I just think about his story about how he almost got to hook up with Uma Thurman when she was 18.
Oh, really? Okay.
But he blew it. Yeah, so.
Would you care to elaborate?
Well, I'm probably not going to remember the full story in great detail, so nobody quote me on this, but I heard him on the radio talking about it on the Comedy Station a while ago. He's basically saying they did some sort of project together when he was kind of on the rise still from the whole Kids in the Hall and everything like that. So his name was getting bigger, and it was actually bigger than her name at the time. But she was in some project with him, and after the day of work on set or whatever, they were encouraged for him to take her out and show her the town or something. And it kind of turned into like a date type feel, at least from his perspective of the story. And from the way he told it, from the way I remember, it sounded like she was giving him the opportunity to go back to his place. And he was the gentleman about it and turned it down.
Yeah.
And then she became Uma Thurman, and his fame kind of became more of a side character and things and everything like that. And so he's like, yep, I'm the guy who blew his chance with Uma Thurman at 18. So,
Kids in the Hall. Was that the show that had the theme that was done by that surf band, Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet?
That sounds right to me, but I don't think I recall it enough to tell. I did watch Kids in the Hall from time to time, but I don't know that I would remember that detail.
I don't know if I've ever seen it, but I remembered that I think that was the band that did the theme, and I really liked the rest of their music.
Sure.
So, anyway.
It could be. Was it like a... What type of music was it?
Like surf.
Surf? Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's it.
That seems like it would fit.
And I think they hate being called a surf band.
Yeah.
I think they have a song called that We're Not a Surf Band.
Sure, yep. That sounds about right.
But, so, if they're listening, sorry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Dave Foley, if you're listening and I butchered your story, sorry.
The other major thing that people might know Dave Foley for you Disney nerds, he was the voice of Flick, the main character from Bug's Life. So kind of a fun little factoid there.
I actually yelled that out while we were watching the movie the other day. Right when he showed up, I was like, "It's Flick!"
That's awesome.
Such a distinct voice.
He does, for sure. Speaking of distinct voices, the last guy on our list here is the good old Christopher Walken. This guy, he's walking around doing things, taking his time with certain scenes. He's a master. So I always like doing a Walken voice. If anybody wants to chime in with their own impression, I'm totally down.
I don't think I have a good one, so I'll hold back now.
Even bad ones are good ones.
That's probably true.
We have to do the rest of the podcast and nothing but Walken.
Nothing but all 4 of us, yeah.
So this character, Adam...
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's great.
If I tried that, it would just sound like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
It's a little scary, Tyler.
Right.
There was 2 guys in a fallout shelter.
There you go. That was it.
It's Christopher Lloyd now.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even hear it, but now I hear it.
Yeah. Well, Walken was famous for The Deer Hunter back in the day. He was an Oscar winner in that one. He's also very talented. He's a well-known personality. He has 2 Emmys himself, 2 Tonys, a BAFTA, a SAG Award. He's got all this long list of stuff. He also was in a Batman movie, and he was in, part of the Batman alum. And I believe there was also, excuse me, another movie he was in 1999, which was Sleepy Hollow. So that's another one that hopefully we can possibly talk about too.
Yeah, I just rewatched that with my wife Shirley recently because she had never seen it, even though you've met her. It's right up her alley.
Oh, that's like atypical her.
Oh, yeah, especially being Tim Burton and everything like that. So we watched it recently. She was like, how did I miss this all those years ago? But that's a fun one.
I think I may have seen that. Yeah,
the Headless Horseman
story.
Yeah,
it seems that sounds really familiar.
There's an excellent fake out in that movie where you think the plot's going a certain direction and they're just like, they explain the whole thing and then they're just like, nope, that wasn't it actually, it's this. And I love when that's done well. It's done wrong sometimes, but when it's done well, you're like, ooh, that felt good.
Agreed, yeah. Bill, you got any favorite Walker films, Sissy Spacek, Silverstone, any notable films from our top A-list actors here that you enjoy?
Dude, I was the worst person to be in the film industry now. Growing up back then, I think I described that weirdly. I didn't know any of these people. Like Dave Foley, I mean, he's got the recognizable face and like voice, but I don't really remember seeing him and stuff. Sissy Spacek, she's got a lot of credentials, but I just really didn't know anything. And again, I was like 10 or 11 at this time. Alicia Silverstone, I only knew her from Batman and Robin, and that's mainly because my dad used to work as if you know what a box and dyeing company is, they like have cardboard advertisements that they'll stamp and cutouts and stuff like that. So like the cardboard advertisements that you'd see at a 7-Eleven or whatever, that's the type of stuff you would do for like Coors and all that stuff. So I saw the advertisements for Batman and Robin before it ever came out. So I remember her from that. But other than that, it's Christopher Walken's the only one that I remember. And my favorite go-to is the watch story from Pulp Fiction.
Oh yeah. Classic.
I got this watch.
Boy's birthright, so he hid it. In one place he knew he could hide something, his ass. 5 long years he wore this watch up his ass. Then he died of dysentery. Give me the watch. I hid this uncomfortable hunk of metal up my ass 2 years.
That's one of those things where I'd like to say it's arguably the best scene in the movie, but every scene is arguably the best scene in that movie, so it's a tough one to say.
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
I love Walken in, the movie with him, Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, Catch Me If You Can. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about, he's like,
2 little mice fell in a bucket of cream.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Bill.
Oh no! You finish your story.
That was it. Okay. I don't want to walk in this whole thing up. You know.
What is the film? Yeah. What is the film? And I don't think I've seen the film, but like they're in the middle of like a highway desert road, and someone's holding a shotgun to him, and he's like, "Put your hands up," and he's like,
7 Psychopaths, I believe, is what that was.
Yeah. And they're like,
he's like, no,
they're like,
I'm tired,
but I have a gun.
Yeah.
Put your hands up. No.
What?
I said no.
Why not?
I don't want to.
But I've got a gun.
I don't care.
I don't care. Yeah.
I have a gun.
Awesome.
I don't care.
Yeah. Shoot me. I don't care.
If anybody's a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there's an excellent scene of Dee trying to quote Christopher Walken in that watch scene that we were talking about. It is hilarious.
Well, before we head to our ad break, I was thinking, speaking of Blast from the Past, was there any like scenes that you remember that was kind of like stuck out to you, that you're like really kind of like when you watch the movie, you're like, oh yeah, I do remember that. Like, for me, like it was really famous at the time was the trailer to Blast from the Past, and it was kind of like the shock value, so to speak, of the trailer is where Adam first comes out of the bunker, and he happens upon a post woman who happens to be, African American, and he goes,
What are you looking at?
Oh, my lucky stars! A Negro!
Say what?
and the atypical, sassy black lady, she's like, excuse me.
I love how it's instantly okay when he's like, oh, it's lovely to meet you, or whatever he says.
Right, and she's like, all right. Yeah. This guy's crazy.
And during that scene when, I was just like, oh God.
Yeah. And you felt kind of anxiety for her. Yeah.
And then her reaction, I was like, well, that was like surprisingly wholesome for something that could have, like that could have been super offensive to her. For
sure.
That kind of brings up a point that I figured I'd be talking about at some point throughout this, but I feel like the tone and like pacing of the movie does not mesh so well with today's standard for comedy.
I agree.
And so there were scenes like that where you almost, not even necessarily that is what I mean by it, not necessarily the speed of the pacing, but more like the mood of it, like how the moods would change so quickly. There were certain points in the movie where I thought something was going to become a problem like that, just the way they set it up. And then it ends up being a joke. Like how she's drinking herself into a stupor while the kid's playing and everything. I was like, oh, that's depressing. But then they make it lighthearted and it's like a joke. And I was like, okay, that's not going to be a problem. And there's several points throughout where I was like, man, the pacing of comedy back then is very different than what it is now.
That's
and like the mood of comedy is different than what it is now. You wouldn't see it done that way anymore.
There were, the drinking thing was certainly when you saw her drinking the sherry or whatever.
Yeah, and then she's passed out.
Right. Because now that would be, that's exposition, and they're going to go into how she becomes an alcoholic,
exactly.
But that's a huge issue,
exactly.
And maybe it was, but they didn't go there.
Yeah, they just made kind of she's passed out, he's playing, so it became a different thing than what I expected based on where the mood of culture of film is right now. I guess it's kind of a way to say it. I don't know if I'm explaining what I mean right, but.
Yeah, no, I get it. Especially like if you grew up, like for me, I grew up on like Andy Griffith and all that stuff. It's the comedy is more in like kind of like the mismatched social conventions.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I forgot to bring a present to little Timmy's birthday party, and it's the social like awkwardness of having to deal with that is where the meat of like the comedy comes from.
Goofy situational things in the moment and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So, how about for you, Bill? Was there anything that's kind of like stood out for you in memory of this movie before you watched it and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this, or anything like that for you?
No, like I said, those two moments, like at the head of our podcast, those two moments of like the covering his mouth with before he brushed his teeth and then walking out the bunker at the end.
Yeah.
Mainly just the only scenes that ever stuck with me. And watching it to parallel you there, John, like, it was, the 90s were a different era of movies entirely. Things were a little bit more unhinged. Like you can get away with a lot more things, but that being said, like the comedy was very 90s, but at the same time, it was kind of ahead of its time because like you're saying, it was making fun of these moments, but not in a way that was actually directly poking at these group of people or this subject matter, like the drinking. It was more like making lightheartedness of it, but then at the same time giving you like the punchline when it all comes wrapped up at the end was more of a message than anything.
And it didn't villainize her in any way.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It was very smart about it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I think we're at that point in time, guys, right before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this guy, that we're going to take a quick ad break. So, guys, hope you stick around, but we'll be right back right after this short ad.
Why do 90% of people dread laundry? Because it's a chore. We are adults, so why do we have to do chores? Sure, doing laundry is as easy as popping it in the machine. But what's the point if your hamper is filled up in just a couple days and you have to do it all over again? Why bother? Introducing Lazy Laundry. Just don't do it. Go outside and play. Live your life.
Hey, and we're back. That was a fun ad, right? Well, let's talk about something a little bit more cheerful and talk about the premise of this movie. We're going to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, if you haven't seen Blast from the Past, Christopher Walken, Sissy Spacek, they have a house. They decide to build a fallout shelter, not a bomb shelter. There's a difference. They decide to go inside said shelter because they hear that there's possible Russian nuclear bombs coming their way, and a plane falls in their backyard, and they decide to go in the bunker. They have a son. The son grows up, and guess what? He's a fresh new fish out into the world, and he decides to see if he can find a girl, get more supplies for their bunker, and live happily ever after with his new girlfriend. However, is this something that could happen in real life? Let's talk about the premise of this movie, and let's talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Guys, have you heard about the Cuban Missile Crisis at all? Do you know the details around it at all, or anything like that?
Just like the real, the real nitty gritty.
Yeah. Well, I figured because I'm the history buff, I'll give you just a little quick and dirty about the Cuban Missile Crisis and what Christopher Walken was so worried about at the time. So, basically, in late 1962, around October 22nd, we had this situation where Russia wanted to put some nuclear bombs in Cuba, and the U.S. said, hey, that's way too close to us. Don't do that. So U.S. and Russia, we threatened each other back and forth. The one thing that I really, can kind of sympathize and understand why Christopher Walken in this was so kind of hell-bent on protecting his family and how close we actually were to nuclear war. There's a story that we found out years and years later that we were actually just one vote away, one decision away from us basically kind of having the whole world being nuked. There was a situation during the Cuban Missile Crisis where we kind of created a blockade around Cuba. So during that time, we were trying to make sure that nobody can kind of go in, come out, and there was a Russian sub that had nuclear bombs on it and missiles, and we said, nah, no good, right?
I think they were calling it a quarantine because they didn't want to use the word blockade because that would insinuate that it was war.
Right, correct. So they decided to drop depth charges. So they could be called freedom charges or, something else. But they decided to drop depth charges. And the Russian sub that was hanging out at the time didn't know what was going on, had lost communication with Russia. They thought the nuclear war had already started because of the bombs that were, quote unquote, dropping above them in the water. And the way that Russian subs work at the time and how they decide to, if they lost communication with Russia, there was 3 people on the boat, 3 officers, and they said, okay, all 3 of these guys have to unanimously vote whether or not we're going to launch these nuclear bombs. 2 out of the 3 said yes, and the 3rd guy goes, no, man, there's just too much risk involved in this. So we were this close to to go into war. Bill, do you want to kind of explain kind of how that ties in with the movie?
Do you guys recall how the beginning of the movie starts with the montage in the title sequence?
Yeah,
does that spark the bell? I know, John, you said you just kind of watched it for the enjoyment, and Tyler, you've never seen this before. But do you remember there's black and white imury in the background, and it has a fun Perry Como song starting it off, and
upbeat version of the beginning of a Mad Max movie.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I decided to do a little bit of a dive, and it actually took me down a rabbit hole. A lot of the imagery, if not every single piece from the beginning, was pulled from a 1982 documentary called The Atomic Cafe. Tyler, have you ever heard of that?
No, actually.
I actually have.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen it, or have you just heard of it?
I maybe have seen clips of it. It wouldn't be enough where I could actually speak to it.
Pretty famous, or?
So, Tyler, I think there's a lot of imagery, and, are you familiar with Bert the Turtle and the duck and cover turtle?
There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt.
I definitely remember the duck and cover thing. That would have been it would have been probably when my folks were in high school. Because I remember them talking about that when I was a little kid.
He knew just what to do. He ducked.
Gone.
Did that monkey just kamikaze himself?
Pretty much.
So the reason why I went into this deep dive is because, for one, like I said, I tried to find out where this imagery was from, just to put it in context. And again, a lot of it was taken from this documentary called The Atomic Cafe.
I love the protective device.
Yeah.
That's great. It's a very Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull maneuver there.
So I think it's fascinating. Again, this is just a comedy. It's just a comedy about a what if scenario. And to parallel with why Brandon brought up the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think whether the Atomic Cafe was a direct inspiration for this film, or if it was just the time and period that Hugh Wilson grew up, there was a lot of imagery with this documentary that influenced a lot of Blast from the Past. But I also wanted to bring it up because of just putting us in the mindset and the absurdity of I guess what it was like growing up in the Cuban Missile Crisis and worrying about during World War II after they dropped the bombs in Japan and stuff like that. But the guy has the kid in the suit next to him, that is a suit made out of crushed fibers of lead.
Inside this layer is a shredded lead a resistance against atomic rays. Okay, Richard, on your way to the air raid shelter.
Oh, great, yeah. Excellent.
So that's his son, and he made a suit for his son to be protected by an atomic bomb, like his intentions were good.
Yeah.
But as we know nowadays, what does lead poisoning do to you?
Yeah.
It's associated with like being
smart.
It's going to be quite the generation.
Yep.
Exactly. And I mean, this is just one guy and his invention or whatever, but it's just like, this is what was happening back then. Like, this guy was concerned for his son, so he made a whole suit for him out of lead, but...
Lead is good. Lead is in gasoline. Gasoline is
safe.
That won't crumple under the pressure or anything like that.
Yeah, so now to go deeper into it, this might be in correlation, or maybe not, but Tyler, a little background of yourself for the audience. I know that you grew up sort of near Rocky Flats.
I did, yep.
Can you enlighten us a little bit about what the Rocky Flats are for those who never have heard of it?
That's why Mom says I'm special. I ate food from our garden. Bad idea. But Rocky Flats was a plutonium trigger manufacturing facility, and they had a bunch of like pretty bad accidents that were covered up. There were several fires in the ventilation system, like the HEPA filter side of it, where they would vent the plant stuff to the outside. There were fires, and thankfully a lot of it went not where we were living. I mean, obviously I wasn't around then. My folks weren't living there either. But like South Arvada got pretty highly contaminated. We were close, but where we were was actually not as contaminated because the area that this, fallout cloud went from those fires was actually kind of like down south. But yeah, Denver does have a history with like the nuclear weapons stuff. Colorado had tons of, I don't remember how many off the top of my head, but there were the Titan missile silos, the nuclear missile silos were here. I got to visit a couple of those when I was younger. Well, we just trespassed, but
got to visit.
I know. I did like that.
Some of my stories need to be updated with "got to visit."
Yeah, I know. I think the statute of limitations on that is
right.
is more than 20 years ago.
Yep.
I can remove "got to visit" and just like trespassed.
Classic.
A new housing development near Denver, Colorado shows the nation's first model homes with built-in fallout shelters. The room is designed with an atomic war in mind. But behind each 8-inch thick reinforced concrete wall, it may prove to be just what the harried housewife is looking for when life with the kids gets too hectic.
Just throw them in the fallout shelter.
Oh, classic. It's also a parenting tool.
Yeah.
What happened? Well, they ran out of air.
Right.
Wow.
You'll never hear Timmy do a temper tantrum ever again.
Neither will anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me show you my room in the back.
Yeah, once again, I didn't know that existed. Obviously, it was way before our time, but it's just like, that's some interesting factoids growing up in Colorado, not knowing that those existed. Like, if that documentary is correct, it is the nation's first fallout shelter built homes.
Well, and there were, Denver was a target for, the Soviets, and because there were a lot of federal employees and facilities here, and all those missile silos and places like Rocky Flats, and so I mean, they obviously put it in the middle of the country, so it'd be more difficult, and also so it was more away from population centers like the West and East Coast. But yeah,
it's nuts. And then just to round it out, I just wanted to show this one last clip. It's also again from the Atomic Cafe, but just mainly just to get us all in the mindset of possibly how Hugh Wilson came up with the storyline, or what influenced people's thinking of this time. So.
Now, you and I don't have shells to crawl into like Bert the Turtle, so we have to cover up in our own way. Paul and Patty know this. No matter where they go or what they do, they always try to remember what to do if the atom bomb explodes right then. It's a bomb. Duck and cover.
This shows how you get like body outlines on walls, right?
I was just thinking, I was like, if this was gonna happen, you gotta like.
This is how you make them.
Well, if you wanna make an outline that looks like Bert the Turtle.
Yeah. That guy wasn't turly enough.
Sundays, holidays, vacation time. We must be ready every day, all the time, to do the.
Use a blanket and newspaper.
This video should be renamed as like how to die in compromising positions.
First, you duck, and then you cover. You duck and cover tight.
Makes me wonder if like table manufacturers and desk manufacturers use this to their advantage.
I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Well, and I'm sure they made them so that people could fit underneath.
Yeah.
And
that and like lead line tables.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, buy our table. It'll save you better than Joe's table.
Right.
They do cost a lot to ship, though.
Yeah, exactly.
And cover.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash?
That's it. I mean, that kind of segues into what you wanted to dive into next, like getting into the meat and potatoes of what this film's about. But yeah, I just, like I said, just watching the opening title sequence, it took me on this rabbit trail to just watch this documentary, which all of this was sourced from that documentary. I didn't have to do much other, but it is crazy, like, to think about the mindset that they were in at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking back at all these, like, I'm sure you guys have seen Bert the Turtle, because I remember growing up seeing him at least once or twice, but I don't think, because we were young, I don't think it actually set in exactly.
He falls into your memory kind of in like the Looney Tunes category rather than the war education category.
Yeah.
You know?
More rather than the fight or flight, because it's talking about death.
Well, and and we were getting older by the time the Soviet Union fell and all that kind of stuff. We were still pretty young though when the Soviet Union fell. We didn't really, grow up under the specter in the same way that people in that time period did.
We missed it
for sure. So coming back from your clips that you just showed us, something I guess just kind of fun factoids about fallout shelters in general. Did some research just to kind of also see how within the realm of process, like how common this could have been, or just something to that point. I mean, we'll go in kind of how the characters themselves in the movie kind of put themselves in that situation, but just kind of some fun facts about that. So researching this online, it was estimated, besides kind of what we just saw in that clip there, around 200,000 basically home-built fallout shelters, not government-made, but home-built fallout shelters were produced by 1965, so right after our Cuban Missile Crisis time. That was kind of like, heavy in everybody's mind. So typically, home-wise, that was about 1 out of every 900 homes had that. So fairly common for kind of what around that time period. So,
well, your dollar went a lot further back then, so I guess they had money to do it.
But that sparks the questions: how many still exist, or were dug up? Like, how many caved in? How many people are still in them?
Who's still down
Obviously,
there?
the bombs were never dropped. So, like, were there actually any people in them, and did they just decay, or were they dug up? Or how many? Like, to jump ahead a little bit, but not jump ahead. Like, one of the beat points was a construction crew found his fallout shelter, but just thought it was a septic tank, so they just built the foundation on it without, like, they just like glossed over it, like, just don't open the septic tank, just build a foundation on it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So how, like, I know it's a comedy, but like, how many times do you think that actually happened in real life if there's that many projected fallout shelters under the ground?
For sure. I also kind of thought it was really interesting. One thing I always kind of had in my mind about this movie is like what would kind of like a modern day equivalent. If we were to kind of label Christopher Walken's character like as a modern day, we would call him a prepper. We had COVID recently, and a lot of people who have been saying, well, the government's going to fail, and you got to take care of yourself. That was like a very same mentality as what Christopher Walken had. He's like, well, I'm going to take care of my own and take care of my own stuff. And he was pretty much the ultimate prepper and created his own fallout shelter. So
I feel like Branch from Trolls might give him a run for his money.
I don't know. Branch is a good singer, but Christopher Walken's a good dancer.
That's true. They need to just team up. They get the Blast from the Past Trolls crossover we never knew we needed.
That would be great. Well, hey man, we're here. We're at the beginning. Let's dive right in. The beginning of the movie, we see we're at like a party, like a housewarming type of thing. We can kind of hear some talking and some murmuring. They're talking about Christopher Walken and his wife Sissy Spacek, and they're kind of like, oh, this couple, they're an odd couple, and this guy's kind of weird. And for me, I thought that was really good exposition.
Oh yeah,
like how they describe the characters.
Yep.
Did anything stand out to you as far as any of the dialogue or anything like that for you guys?
I don't know so much that anything really stood out particularly in that scene beyond what you just said. Kind of like the exposition being set up with. I feel like a lot of times older movies in some ways did a better job of showing and not telling in certain ways. And I mean, there's still a lot of great movies nowadays that do it as well, but I feel like there's a lot of exposition dumps we get these days as stories get more complex and everything like that. So it was a really nice way to show that and give us the idea that they're kind of goofy already. And it also did a good job of setting it up that he's more goofy than she is, but she goes along with it
for sure.
Type thing, So I liked that. I thought that was all pretty solid.
Do you recall like the one plot point that makes it, or I guess it wouldn't be a plot point, but the one piece that they use to really sell that he is a goofball?
That joke. Joke that he's telling.
Put on his bill or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Further than that, they actually, his neighbors and stuff made fun of him for it.
Are we talking about the the next story beat is the plane crashes in their backyard and
According to Caltech, this Weber guy was a bona fide genius, but a borderline nutcase.
I mean, the investigators bring up that he likes to drink warm Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Neighbors over there said the guy spent day and night out here. She'd bring him sandwiches and hot Dr. Pepper.
You drink it hot?
Yeah.
Good God.
So that was an interesting thing to me because it's like, why is that so weird? Is that just a silly comedy?
People did that, and I think people do that. I remember when I was a kid, a friend of mine, they really liked Dr. Pepper, and in the summertime they would drink it hot because they kept it in their garage. It would just get hot in there, and they'd be like,
I guess I see where the idea comes from then, but yeah,
Like,
I don't know that I agree.
So I had to do a little deep dive because that just weirded me out too. But it's like they would actually, so it was an advertising ploy. So they could sell more Dr. Pepper during the wintertime.
I see.
And they would actually
Genius.
Christopher Walken actually does it a couple times as a character. Is they would boil it and they would describe it as a cider.
I told my wife it was like their tea.
Interesting.
Yeah. You guys should try a warm Dr. Pepper. But Brandon, if you want to show them the next slide. So the slide that has the guy with the yellow turtleneck on.
Hi, I'm Dick Clark. You know, when the weather is sunny and hot, you and I really go for a delicious ice-cold Dr. Pepper, the soft drink that goes so well with hot weather. Deliciously different. When the weather's hot, Dr. Pepper tastes great cold. And when the weather's cold, that's when Dr. Pepper tastes so great hot. Hi, Max. Good friend.
It's like ladling it out of a punch bowl.
Perfect time for hot Dr. Pepper. Delicious and so easy to prepare. Just heat Dr. Pepper in the saucepan.
Pour that on him.
Yeah. He just turned into Frosty the Snowman. He's like,
It just quickly transitions into a horror scene.
Yeah. It's a real like Wicked Witch of the West scene right there.
But yeah, warm Dr. Pepper. Never heard of it. My wife loves Dr. Pepper. So I think I'm going to trick her one of these days and boil up some.
You'll have to let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
with a lemon slice.
Yeah,
apparently.
I know.
I think this was the aside from the fact that they knew that they were kind of preppers, his neighbors and stuff, it was the warm Dr. Pepper that really set everybody off as far as character-wise.
That kind of fits even in the party scene when they are talking about them because they explain like he's weird and they're like, okay. And they're like, they say something about her. I don't remember exactly what the line is, but one of the other people's like, oh, so she's more normal. And they're like, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
So like, that gives you a little bit of clue that he probably starts it all, but she goes with it.
Yeah.
Just remember, don't mention the communists.
Calvin's a great guy, but he's a little,
Nutty? What's his wife like?
Housewife.
Likes to cook. Pregnant.
Normal then. I wouldn't go that far.
Hello, hi, Dave. Just look at you. Any day now.
Well, kind of the antithesis for kind of getting them inside the bunker. There's a radio broadcast or a television broadcast saying, hey, Cuban Missile Crisis stuff is happening. And Christopher Walken's like, all right, it's time to go now. Like, everybody should go home.
Let's all be with our families.
Yep,
or whatever,
exactly.
yeah.
And he just wanted to go down to his fallout shelter and say, okay, cool. Let's,
Good luck, you guys.
Yeah, good
We're
luck,
going
everybody
down
else.
here. Yeah.
So he doesn't know it, but as the audience, we know it, that there's the plane crash that happens in his backyard. And one scene that I didn't remember, but I was laughing when I had watched it, was when the plane crashes and hits in the backyard. He has like a very like Christopher Walken-y like voice, like, oh my God, all my senses.
The heat. That's happening.
Yeah. Oh, it's happened. Oh, look at that heat on my surface indicators. Knock that. Oh, Lord. It's happened.
What was that noise?
I almost felt like he was doing an impression of himself.
It does look kind of that way when you say it like that, yeah.
which had me rolling. But we
kind of like the SNL skit for the cowbell.
Oh yeah,
like, I need more cowbell.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of looks like that, just flailing around.
Well, it's funny, like you don't know in that scene if that's the way it was blocked and rehearsed, or if it's just Walken being Walken.
It's just what he did, yeah.
Yeah, because it was very like my senses, and then he hits the button to lock the door, and I know that was a beat point that the character needed to do, but it was just very Walken, and it's just like, I need to lock us in. You know what I mean? Like it was just so stagey and over the top, and
it kind of reminds me. One year in school for high school, or maybe it was middle school. Either way, it was picture day, and they kept trying to get me to smile bigger, and so they taken the picture over and over, and she kept being like, no, smile, and I'm giving a little smile, but she's like, no, smile. So I did the cheesiest big like full teeth, and I got like an overbite and everything, just full on. And that's the one they used in the yearbook.
Nice.
So like it makes me think that's how Walken was. Like the director's like, we need bigger, and finally he's like, I'll go as big as you want.
My sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you just look like a serial killer?
Pretty much, yeah, like a 14-year-old serial killer. A little buzz cut going on and everything too. It's very not me if you know me nowadays.
One thing that like we talked about preppers, and I thought was like not only was it like good for the story, but I also thought it was like really good set design and other things. Like you can.
Oh, the bunker looks awesome. Like,
yeah, it looks
the
great.
racks of stuff when he's pulling out the drywall. That might be one of my favorite things that you see.
Yeah.
in anything in the bunker is that he's just got layers of like sheetrock drywall.
Yeah, that tickled my man brain a lot. I was like, oh, look at all those nails.
Like, yeah, look at that. He's got everything.
I don't think it was sheetrock. It was sheets of popcorn ceiling.
Yeah. Asbestos ceiling tile.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Yep. Yeah, because she wanted a ceiling over the room. That's right.
Yeah. Does anybody still have popcorn ceiling in their apartments? Or?
I have it in my townhouse in a couple of the rooms. Yeah.
Nice. How is that still a thing?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't think it ever got changed
because it's so obnoxious to get rid of.
Yeah, I think that probably is part of it.
Yeah.
It's worse than those Triniton TVs that we used to have to haul out.
Oh, don't bring those up to me and Brandon.
Both of our hearts and our minds.
I just had to move one of those the other day and thought about all of you guys.
Oh
yeah.
man, I hope I've seen my last, but I know I haven't.
I looked it up. And this one was close to 200 pounds.
Oh God,
just absurd.
Tyler, I know this is a little bit of a segue, but do you remember the image that we had about the Morningstar Triniton?
I told that to these people that we were helping move that, and they thought that was awesome.
Enlighten the boys.
Yeah, so can you guys elaborate?
Well, so we used to deliver televisions and then take away people's old CRTs or whatever, those big the big projection televisions that were awful.
Yep. We did too.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. You guys, you
all
guys
been
did
there.
that. Yeah, I forgot. You guys did that too. I just helped out sometimes, but those big ones, I couldn't. The biggest projection ones, I couldn't even lift those. I could physically lift them, but then if I moved, I'd just tip over.
Right.
Yep.
Because they're just so massive. But Sony Trinitrons, for people that don't know, are just exceptionally heavy. They're very high quality CRTs, but
hence the nickname, the Triniton.
Exactly,
and that's where we coin that, Bill?
I'm sure a lot of people have, but we definitely.
It's an industry term, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I'm sure that other people had called it that.
Anybody who has ever tried to lift one has coined that term.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's so intuitive that you feel it internally as you try to.
But they're only like what, like a 35-inch TV, but it's like 200 pounds. Like what? It's like a black hole of mass.
And some of them are 250. You know, they're really heavy, especially the ones that are the more flat. CRTs. I don't know if they, in the manufacturing they use more glass or what the deal is. But, I don't know why they're like that, why they're that heavy. But
it's got handles built into it. You're in a bad situation.
Yeah,
exactly.
Handles, quote unquote. But anyway, so these things are unbelievably heavy, and we thought that what would be a good thing, because we're stuck in traffic all the time delivering these TVs.
Sure.
And you'd always have to deal with idiots in traffic, and we thought it'd be great to have somebody in the back of the truck, and chain this shit to something back there, and you just throw up the door when someone's tailgating you or whatever, and just look them right in the eyes and kick that motherfucker out the back of the truck.
I so hoped this is where the story was going.
And it just cannonballs into their vehicle. And
have you guys seen Beavis and Butthead Do America?
That kind
of when Butthead comes out the back of the car.
The television would do that into their vehicle, and then we'd have it on like one of those gear reducing cranks.
Yeah.
Because nobody in there, it'd pull you out and kill you too.
Exactly.
But if it's on this, it'd just be flailing around behind the truck. It'd take out vehicles.
I'm like picturing Fast and the Furious right now with the safe, like smashing through the city.
You could go take a 90-degree and whip it around the corner and decapitate somebody or whatever. But anyway,
I love it.
So but then whoever was back there could crank this thing back up like some type of medieval,
and it'd be fine too.
Yeah. Right. It wouldn't damage the thing. You could still go home and plug in your Super Nintendo or your
Exactly.
I can still play my Sega tapes on this.
Love it.
For sure. Well,
that was good.
Well, speaking of things that weigh heavy on people's hearts.
Heavy enough to stop them.
Yeah. So back to the movie. That's a good story.
Yeah.
So the locks are set for 35 years. So immediately you can kind of tell that Sissy Spacek is like not very happy about what's going on.
Well, and if people haven't seen it, they go into the fallout shelter when she's like 9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she's holding a pot roast from her dinner party, and she's 9 months pregnant, and now she's hearing that these locks are locked for 35 years, and she just has her whole life just flash before her.
And he kind of like rushes her into it as well. Like, we'll take care of all this stuff later. So she doesn't even get to like, maybe, I guess it's more inferred, but she doesn't even get to like grab any of the stuff she would have planned on bringing down there.
Right.
Type of thing, yeah.
Personal effects or anything.
Yeah, things
like
that she would normally keep in the house rather than down there prepared for her that she would like to bring down. Maybe like photo albums or something,
Yeah.
Calvin, Christopher Walken's character, does a really good job of rebuilding the whole entire house underground. So everything
maybe there was a duplicate of everything in there.
Everything.
It was like a 1-for-1 for everything.
It could be.
Including popcorn ceilings.
Oh, maybe I've just got the creeps.
Could you? This is just like home.
No, Calvin. This is different. Believe me.
Would you like a tranquilizer?
You've got tranquilizers?
I told you I have everything.
Skipping ahead a little, that means there's 3 of that exact house that are built
across
the time.
Yes. Spoilers.
The other thing, like we were talking about, like set design and stuff like that throughout the movie, I thought was really interesting. When they show passage of time throughout the movie, you can kind of see the quote unquote like the set or the house like deteriorating a little bit, or like minor changes here or there. The one thing that I paid attention to, because he is a prepper, he had like a whole hydroponics situation, and you can kind of see like the plants and like supplies like slowly dwindling if you like pay attention to the background.
That's cool.
Which I thought was like really good, like pay attention type
I don't think I picked up on it on my view. I'm gonna have to look for that the next time. That's really cool.
I thought it was a riot when she looks like she's going shopping. You know, she's
Yes.
like she's at a Kroger, like at a Kroger or something.
Yep.
Just caught.
Great.
It's like, oh, can of beans. I guess they have them still.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was more Dr. Pepper in that scene than anything.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
I would think there was like 3 or 4 like Dr. Pepper scenes in like this movie.
Yeah.
So
I wonder how much they paid to have this movie made.
I don't know.
That's a good point.
Dr. Pepper gods, would you like to let us know?
Sponsored by warm Dr. Pepper, not cold Dr.
This is true.
It's like, oh yeah, there you go. It's like Wayne's World 2, I think it is. They have like Pepsi and everything.
Yeah, he's like totally selling out.
He's like, I totally hate when people sell it. He's wearing like Nike.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, at this point in time, like she's pregnant. She ends up having Adam. Which is what they end up naming their son. And he, was born, 1962. So he's, going to be in this fallout shelter with them for 35 years. So essentially we're looking at 1997 kind of when they're going to be getting out of here. What would have been pretty much modern day when the movie came out in 1999. So, there's kind of 2 worlds happening while Adam is growing up when we watch this movie. There's the world that's inside the bunker and obviously the world that's above. Really, from Adam's perspective, he doesn't know anything different. You had made that great analogy of Plato's cave. Yeah. And one thing that I thought was kind of, we talked also of like, the mom kind of getting more and more sedated and drunk over time. Like, and then we could actually see like the actual change of the world above with, I think it's Mom's Diner is the name of the diner. It starts out as the soda shop, and
it's all wholesome and nice. And
wholesome and nice.
Yeah. As time goes on, things change.
Rattier. And
I don't know.
Or better, depending on your music
I guess
taste.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't know if they specifically mention what town they were in. I know that they're in the Southern California area. It kind of gets to the vibe to me as like LA.
LA.
Yeah.
Well, it says LA 1962 at the beginning credits. But where in LA we don't know. But it's supposed to be LA.
Yeah, somewhere in that area at least.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say this whole time Christopher Walken is teaching his son. He gets to learn boxing. He gets to learn all these different languages and stuff like that.
Gets to dance with his mom.
Yeah, he gets to dance with his mom. Yep. So he really gets to be learning how to be like the perfect gentleman, and kind of is like a in this little time capsule, quite literally. And one thing, if you're eagle-eyed viewer, there is when they're in the classroom, one of the first memes, as one would say, when I used to teach, is during World War II. There's a little picture of a guy with kind of like his nose on a wall, and U.S. troops used to put those like graffiti those, and like it was like a meme back in the day. Every place they had been.
Kilroy.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Kilroy
was
that,
here. Yep. Which is, if you ever get to go to the Washington Monument, or not Washington, the World War II monument in Washington D.C., they kind of have behind a half wall like a picture of Kilroy, which is a ode to the vets.
Yeah.
So I really, really enjoyed watching Sissy Spacek just like slowly like dive into
unravel.
Dive into insanity. I don't know about you guys, but during like COVID, like that's kind of how I felt. Was just like, I was like, okay, this is going to be over in a week or 2, right? Like thinking in my mind, like it's going to be done. And I was like, I got myself like, some supplies, whatever. And then slowly as like COVID went on, I'm like drinking like a box of wine like every like 3 or 4 days.
Sure.
I feel like that was her.
Yep.
So I mean,
definitely.
Me personally, I kind of related with Sissy Spacek.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. I don't know if you guys picked up on it or not, but it's just like Walken and Sissy, like their characters loved each other, but at the same time, it's just like you can tell like Calvin made this basement to save his family, but that's also his weird quirkiness. And
like there was something he loved about it too. Like,
yeah, he loved it. That's just his quirk. That's his weirdness. And so he made this, I would say, for himself first, and then he made it for his family because he loves his family. But you can see, like, during the whole entire like montage scene that Brandon's talking about of Adam growing up to 35, like Christopher Walken and his son love each other and love every minute about it, and they're getting to be a father and son, whereas Sissy's just unraveling as the years go by. And there's even a line at the beginning of when they first get locked in where he's just like, I made some, again, warm Dr. Pepper for you, it's your favorite. And Sissy responds, no, Calvin, it's your favorite. And she kind of walks off and he's like, what, really? So it's like, it's like what you're saying, Brendan. It's like she's in it because she's a family mom and she loves him, and it's just kind of a different generation where she's in it for the end. But you could tell she's not really in it. Like she was, if it wasn't for the alcohol being on base, she probably wouldn't have lasted.
I feel like from a storytelling standpoint too, what you guys are saying brings up an interesting aspect. It's kind of where you see a story arc fully complete itself for both the mother and the child. But for Christopher Walken's character, he is the same person at the end of the movie that he was going in. And so he's one of those rare characters that work without having a story arc. And it's kind of interesting, and it works in the movie's benefit to do it that way, which is kind of cool. I thought that was a sweet aspect of it.
Do you think it's the character in general, or do you think it's Walken's execution, or both?
I think it's the character in general, and it's kind of what you talked about, like him sizing out the new bunker at the end. Yeah, like that, I think kind of feeds into
awkward step.
Yeah, exactly. Like he doesn't seem, and even the line where he says he doesn't see much difference between the two, it kind of tells us where his head was the whole time they were in there. Like he was just living his life as normal, where for the other two, there was something different about it. Not necessarily that Brendan Fraser knew something was different, but we as the audience did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was another thing on the slides. I don't need to show you. I can just describe to you, but it's exactly what you're talking about. They actually, filmmaking wise and story wise, they actually do a parallel between when they first land in the bunker and then when they get their house at the end. Christopher Walken, it's literally right after he tells her, like, I got warm Dr. Pepper for you. And she's like, no, this is so different than normal life. We're in a bunker, and they do a wide shot of her and the bunker's behind her. And Christopher Walken's like, I thought of everything. And he like does a hand gesture, and his hand goes right through where a window would be in the back window doors. And then paralleling that at the end of the film, they do the exact same shots. He's like, oh, this is kind of nice and the same or whatever. And she looks around, she's like, no, this is different. And then the actual world's behind her, and he goes and does the same hand gesture, and there's actually window panes in the actual back doors. And it's just kind of a nice little, like,
that's great. I actually didn't notice that. That's pretty cool.
It's weird. Like going back, like, again, like it's a comedy. I didn't really expect much from it. I remember it being fun and entertaining as a kid. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect me to go down this rabbit hole of finding the Atomic Cafe. I didn't expect there to be a lot of these little like nuanced like parallels but they actually did a very good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Hugh Wilson and the cast and crew and everybody did a really good job of like telling this absurd story in a way that was actually very well thought out and planned.
This discussion, especially with you bringing up the Atomic Cafe and us trying to get in the mindset of that, has actually made me kind of realize something I didn't before, which hopefully is what you were going for with that. But
that's
fine. The movie has kind of like a quirky, bouncy feel to it kind of all the way through. And I feel like the Atomic Cafe clips all did too. So kind of what we were talking about, like why you wanted to show that, it's almost like you can see the movie as a reflection of those ads and like tactics, right. Like the videos that were put out, the propaganda and everything back there. Like it was a serious topic, but it was presented as if it was like an educational video for a kid's school or something like that.
Swept under the rug type of thing. Like they told you.
Yeah, making kind of light of it. And so the movie also kind of comes from a perspective of doing the same thing with that topic. So that's a cool thing that I've kind of realized now.
Well, and it doesn't take itself too seriously either. You know, it's not trying to be like some kind of, you know, super technical and everything. I mean, obviously it's a comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a romantic comedy, but you know, I just appreciated that it didn't take itself so too seriously. It's like, who cares about the story's ridiculous?
Yeah.
Because I mean, like when the plane was crashing, it was just the most absurd thing ever. But it was, I mean, you just kind of had to laugh.
Very goofy.
It was just ridiculous. It would never happen like that.
Yeah,
you know,
but like, well, I'm going down. I'm pulling the chute. And like hitting the ejector.
And the way that it went straight up and straight down, like some Tex Avery. Like, I mean, like, you know.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, it does go straight up.
Yeah, I don't know if you picked up, Tyler, because you only watched it once, but it's like if you hear the actual, it's very muffled, but if you hear the radio in the jet, he's like a test pilot, or not a test pilot, he's like a trainee. And the guy on the radio is like, "Can you set it down over the ocean?" He's like, "Yes, sir, I can."
I've got secondaries of an engine fire. I'm gonna need to find a clear area to eject.
Roger, one. Can you make it to the ocean?
Roger that, tower.
He ejects himself, and then they show a close-up of the stick just going to the left. So it's like, what military procedure?
It was the most irresponsible. Like, I remember thinking that too. I'm glad you said that, because I just thought when I was watching, I was like, that is the most irresponsible. Like, yeah, and it immediately the stick just goes just like over, like
as soon as he's gone.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
One thing that I enjoyed and also thought was ridiculous, when the 35 years is finally up, the dancing that Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek do, that for me also reminded me of my parents.
Nice.
when they've had a few, because they kind of like do like the whole yeah.
Sure.
Speaking of like when the timer is up, so to speak, the other thing that Christopher Walken does is he dons like a hazmat suit, and in the clips that Bill showed us, there was a lead-lined suit that somebody made for somebody. But there's a yellow suit that he wears, kind of reminds me of the Homer Simpson, lead-lined suit, as well as if you've seen Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
I totally thought of.
Yep. Yeah. That's kind of where my mind went to. Yeah.
So Brandon.
Yeah.
That is kind of like the last little nuggets that I'm giving you guys for this evening is that suit.
Okay.
So first of all, to lead into it, when the mom's cafe becomes the dive bar, as Brandon described for the audience, like there's a parallel of like the years going by and like dwelling life is happening underneath, and this mom's cafe over time becomes a bar, and then it becomes a dive bar, and then it becomes like a rundown
like a
building.
grunge bar.
Derelict, yeah. But if you can see it, in fall of 1991, the bar is now called Purgatory. And then, jumping ahead, spoilers for you guys, the two stores down from the bar that they come out of is a adult bookstore in the future. But at this point in 1991, it's a used bookstore. And if you look at the sign right above it, it says parking in the rear. So
nice.
Some really nice, like, set deck and thoughtful, like,
that's
little
cool
nuggets. And then we jump ahead to, I think it's when the latch actually finally opens. They start with this shot on this billboard, again, right above the dive bar, and it says a new look, and it's these guys in hazmat suits. And if you look down in the right-hand corner of this billboard, it says Intel Inside. So I went and found it. And in 1997, there was an Intel Pentium 2 processor. And we'll take a little second to watch. This is the commercial that came out in 1997. And they used it because it's Walken coming out of the basement in this hazmat suit, but also it's just absurd 90s commercial. So I wanted to share with you guys.
Oh, God, save me. Oh, for I have seen the light. I come in peace.
Just imagine, like, around this, that's why they put it in here for the comedy bits of it, but also like the absurdity, like Christopher Walken walking down the street in this hazmat suit to these people in the 90s probably wouldn't think anything of it.
Yeah,
but
right.
Him he's an outsider, being birthed out of a hole after 35 years.
Just came from a Vanilla Ice concert or something.
Yeah. But yeah, when like he gets out of the elevator, he gets out and it's like the back alley of this thing, and it looks like a dystopian world. Which I don't know if you guys have ever been to LA or seen Skid Row. Like if you dropped somebody to off even modern day stuff like a Skid Row, like oh, so the apocalypse happened.
Right.
So it's
like people are eating out of trash and but this is just to him it looks like they're mutants.
Well, and the nighttime aspect of it doesn't help either. It's much more pleasant during the day when he gets to see it later, when Brendan Fraser's character gets to see it later.
Yeah, for sure. It just kind of, reminded me of that one trip that we had, Bill, when I think you had been to LA before. Like we went to the Chinese Grauman's Theater and you're like, yeah, nope, I'm good.
Yeah. So to give a little background of that, when did we go? Was I still in college for film, or was
I think you just graduated, because this is when Victoria had lived with us at that time.
Yeah.
Because she went on this vacation with us.
Yeah. I went to, I think I explained it in the first one. I went to college for engineering, not film. And then I fell into film. So I don't really know the background of what LA is. And I never wanted to really go to LA. That's why I don't live in LA right now. And so, yeah, we took this little vacation, and I thought the Chinese theater where they do all the live premieres was white gloved and premiere worthy and beautiful. And
sure,
I was wrong. Like, it is just as messed up as the rest of LA, but they definitely shine it up for the movie premieres.
For premieres, yeah. I could see that being accurate.
Yeah.
I've never been there either, but I get the idea.
It's very Hollywoodized, yeah. If you see it on TV or movies or what have you, for sure.
Movie magic.
I mean, the other thing that's a good plot point that kind of goes throughout the he's not a kid anymore, but the kid was at the soda shop and he ends up owning the building. He takes it over from his mom. Gets that nice little sun tattoo on his forehead.
Right in the middle of his head.
Yeah.
What's something on your head?
Yeah, he's like, I know.
Was that Charlie Manson? Like, what was the reference, or was it just supposed to be like a hippie sunset?
Well, I think what it is just having a tattoo on your face just makes you different,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what they were going for.
The Manson question makes me curious, though, because didn't they do something like that?
Well, Manson carved the swastika into his forehead.
Okay,
that's what happened. But so Christopher Walken comes out and he becomes their new deity, so to speak. He's like, don't touch my elevator.
Yep.
Leave my elevator alone.
I love that.
The first of his 10 commandments.
Yeah.
Don't touch my elevator.
I love that little micro plot, because I mean, it was like they'd unintentionally generated their own cargo cult.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you know what those are.
It makes me think I want to see that storyline progress in its full length feature film. Rick and Morty did something very similar with a cult aspect for like a false deity. It was pretty hilarious, but that'd be a good one to explore as well for Blast from the Past.
Love me some Rick and Morty.
I love how so every time Christopher comes up, he's the father.
Are you all right? Yes. Oh, Lord, yes. Are you the one who came last night, all in yellow?
All in yellow. Oh, that was my father.
And then
and the mother and the. It's like a new holy trinity for him.
Yeah, I actually, as somebody who grew up in some religion and not associated with it now at all, but I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the father, the son, but then the mother.
Yeah, it's new. Yeah,
it was a little
different now.
Yeah, a little different.
I love it. Yeah,
not the Holy Ghost or.
It's great.
I love how, I don't know if you guys recall, but it's like when the mother comes up, she's got a martini in hand. She's still sedated, but she turns around. And his first reaction, the son that owns the bar, his first reaction is, "And who are you?" And she freaks out, the mother, and you think it's just her and him. And then all of a sudden,
Who are you?
I'm the mother.
It's the mother! It's the mother! The mother!
all his followers just come out of frame. And he's just got he amassed 20 followers to follow the father and the son, and
furthering the idea that it is a dystopian society.
Yeah.
This dude was just able to gather all these people on this whim of this new religion.
I like how she nopes out of there though. She's like, nope.
Yep.
Just hits the button.
I'm not dealing with that.
Not today.
Well, she's never seen anyone that looked like them either, and they're worshiping her. Like, this is a whole shock.
Was able to assemble her own or his own snake church, real quickly.
Pretty much. Which, to your point, I would love to see like how that happened. That would be like a great side
How
movie.
did he acquire these followers? Did they come to him somehow? Did he seek them out? What happened?
Probably went to Heroin Anonymous.
That sounds accurate the way he's depicted throughout a good portion of the film. So.
There's something under my building, man.
It's like scratching.
One of the things that is another theme, and I think the one thing I also love about this movie, there's like a lot of like they come back to jokes. Is Christopher Walken goes up and he's like tells his son like there's poison gas, because at the adult bookstore, and then he also says the S word is French. It's a colloquial term, ancient term. So there's just running gags that they have throughout this whole thing.
Yeah,
it's just very, very clever.
It's a 15th century colloquialism from some district of France or
happy.
something.
Yeah.
Which is great about that joke, because it's like we all do that, right? Oh, it's a French word or whatever.
Right.
But you don't actually.
Pardon my French.
Pardon my French. Yep.
Yeah, pardon my French. And you don't know until later on in the film that it's like, oh, he actually learned French. And
Exactly.
So that's why he's so confused.
And he wants to use it. Like, he's eager to use it because, I do know that language.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, what does that mean? I don't know. It says fragile. Is that French?
Must be Italian.
Maybe it's Italian.
One of the things I also like, if you are eagle-eyed in this movie, when Brendan Fraser has one of his birthdays, he gets a jacket from his mom.
Oh boy, a jacket.
Your mom made that all by herself.
No kidding.
Wears it throughout the movie. When Christopher Walken has a heart attack and he's laying in bed, he has his blanket on top of him. If you notice that Brendan Fraser's wearing the jacket, it's the same material. So when the mom made it, she made it from.
She's got a roll of that back there with all the popcorn ceiling and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
That was.
So
I think it's actually more so like they were starting to run out of supplies, so she started reusing.
Yeah, could be too.
Reusing stuff. Yeah,
35 years of making birthday presents. You got to get creative.
That brings me to another point. Talking about the gifts. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, and the more we do this, Brandon probably already knows this about me, but oftentimes I will state that my favorite thing in a movie is a weird, obscure quote, like something that somebody says in a goofy way. Like
that's this podcast. We love it.
When I see it, it hits me, and that's the scene that I go back to every time. It's like weird little things. So in this movie, there's one of those too. My favorite thing in the entire movie is when he gets the skates and he goes, "These are swell. I mean swell." Like the line is just so good, and he delivers it with such sincerity that it's a standout moment for me in the whole movie. I just love that scene.
That's great.
Parallel that, John, like I agree. Like he got the jacket first, and then he got the skates. And when he got the jacket, his line was, "Oh boy!" And it's like the way he delivered it. To most of us, it would be almost like he's being not sincere.
Oh boy, a jacket.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh boy, a jacket. But he does it. Brendan Fraser does it so well that he's just like, "Oh boy, a jacket. I love this thing." So it's like so quickly you think it's going to be him making fun of this present, but again, this is all the life he knows, and his mom and dad is his best friend, so he legitimately loves this blanket jacket.
And especially viewing it in 2024 with the vocabulary that we use, when he uses that words, I hear it as like sarcasm and like he's like insulting it in a way, but he's just so sincere and pure, like it's excellent.
So Brendan Fraser comes out of the bunker, and he, as we described, he's the son, according to the new elevator cult leader. Then the famous scene that we talked about earlier, "Oh my lucky stars," there's a Negro, and then he's like, "Oh, poison gas," and gets everybody to run. One of the things that happens very shortly after that was like so cringy for me, and I don't know how you guys felt, when he was on the bus and he was described as like, "Oh, we're moving."
Oh yeah.
And he keeps talking.
Wow. So this is public transportation. My father says it becomes more and more important because of pollution, which is more and more carbon dioxide and other hazardous gases in the air.
But the tweaker
next
that's
to him.
Right next to him.
You know where I can find a grocery store? have to find Dad.
I was cry laughing. I forgot that scene.
Yeah.
The tweakers.
That guy was so messed up.
Like he was even too weird for the tweaker.
Have to find Dad. That in a hardware store, and a liquor store, and a standing Holiday Inn. There's a grocery store up there, up this way. Where? Up there. Oh, thank you. Driver, please stop the bus immediately. I wish to get off.
And the tweaker's like, stop the bus.
Yeah, exactly.
Please stop the bus, sir. Stop the bus.
I love because it was, again, you're talking about these jokes being reused, but I love that he's just like, do you have a gun? And the tweaker's like tweaking like, yeah.
Do you have a gun, by the way? Oh. Well, thank you for not waving it around, and for not vomiting, for that matter.
He's like, yeah.
Thanks for not waving it around.
So good. I like how that joke is like still relevant too. Like, sit down next to somebody on a bus. Do you have a gun? Like,
yeah. Well, the old couple that kept looking back too. I just love how unbothered they were.
Yeah.
Like, not to like stereotype people, but I feel like if you're on like public transportation, because I've been on light rail here in Colorado so many times.
Yeah.
Where there's just like, people who just like act out really weirdly, and you're just like, this is life.
Yeah.
That
was a part where and this kind of goes back to that comment I made earlier about how like movies are made differently now than they were back then, and like the pacing and stuff like that, and just the way things are shown. And that was one of the scenes where I thought it was going to go a completely different way, because the way that they're staring at him was done in a way where it almost looked like they recognized him in some way. Like, we knew our neighbors disappeared. Is that their kid? She was pregnant when they went into their bunker. Like, they knew what was going on, and they were going to be like, have some sort of story for him. Come with us. We know who you are type thing. Because like I said, I didn't remember much of the movie, so I didn't remember what the actual plot was other than to find a girl.
No, that's fair.
And so I was like, do they know him or something? And it was just one of many different times where the way it was shot made my mind go in a completely different direction of where the plot actually went.
I think in the 90s they also just used weird looking people for comedic bits.
True, yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were old and goofy looking, so I think they might have just used them just for that. But it does make you think, right?
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing that, when you had said that really makes me think as well, I do that a lot in movies. Like when I watch movies, I think it's because we've seen maybe so many movies.
Sure.
Like,
and we break them down like this, where we like think of where's this plot going? Like,
yeah,
what did they do here?
Where would things diverge? Because like I'm always thinking like, okay, what's the next step or story? But that's an interesting point. Bill, I know you had in your notes here that I'm looking at. You want to talk about the butcher scene that shortly after he gets off the bus. The line.
I don't really have much notes other than that scene was delivered so dry that it killed me.
Oh, it broke me. I too.
Like Brendan, to describe for the viewers, Brendan Fraser was primarily sent up to the surface to get a grocery list of things to bring back down to the bunker because they're running out of supplies.
Supply run, yeah.
Yeah, the first place he goes is to a supermarket, and he goes up to the butcher and he has a interaction with the butcher about prices and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden he realizes, oh crap, I just got on a bus and I'm lost. I don't know where I'm at. And this butcher, I forgot where I wrote it down, what his name is. It's an actor that I don't really know because I was too young to know him.
You said Todd Sussman is his name.
There you go. Yeah. And he's just so dry and monotone. And Brendan Fraser's like final thing is like,
oh, well, that's terrific. Except it just occurred to me that I don't know where home is. I'm lost. Do you know where I live?
No.
Will you please excuse me?
Gladly.
Thank you.
And they just stay on his face for a second, and my God, it just it killed me.
It's so good.
Well, if you've ever worked with the public, you would relate to that guy.
You feel it. You feel it deeply.
Exactly. Like Tyler and I worked at Sam's Club, so we dealt with people that like that all the time. Where it's just like, dude, get out of my face.
I want to be here less than you do, so please, by all means, get away from me.
I'm just waiting for 5 o'clock to roll around and I'm out of here.
Exactly.
I was gonna say how clever that line was delivered. It reminds me of some of the times I've seen you like dismiss people like very cleverly. Like it's professional, but you're like, yep.
You get good at it, especially when you work in other people's homes. You get good at figuring out ways to get away from them.
For sure. Well, this is right about the time in the movie where Adam, he's feeling lost and downtrodden. He's trying to find the adult bookstore again and the poisonous gas. He finds Eve, and he goes into a used bookstore. Sorry, a used card shop. And tries to basically sell his cards, and he almost gets swindled and meets Eve. One thing that I thought would be like kind of an interesting fact.
The viewers that don't know, his dad ended up giving him a whole box of baseball cards.
Correct.
Which at the time, the whole world's to Christopher Walken's character, the whole world's dead. So it's just a box of fun little baseball cards. But as you can imagine, 35 years later, they're probably worth some money.
Well, especially being kept in that condition and everything. It's not like he had them out showing them to people or anything like that. So you can imagine those things stayed pretty well preserved. And you can only imagine which cards they are. We get to hear a couple of the cards, but you can imagine the collection is riddled with awesome stuff.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm sure as Brandon was about to get into, and sorry that I cut him off, but I had to give a little backstory of like, he was given these things by his dad thinking that they're worth nothing. And Brendan Fraser, not knowing what this world is, he just goes into the store to sell them for whatever. And he doesn't know what he has. But he's got a box of treasures.
Yeah, for sure. And then like I've heard stories of kids back in the day used to just put their baseball cards in the spoke of their tires just so they can sound like a motorcycle. And so those cards were abused, and so that's why most of those cards are so rare, is because when you're a kid you play with them, and you beat them up or wherever. So the better condition they're in, obviously, the more money they're worth. Especially if it's rare. The particular card that she holds up and says, this particular card today, if you sold it, is worth $6,000. It was a, oh gosh, forgive me, what was his name?
Probably Mickey Mantle.
It's Mickey Mantle, thank you. Thanks for saving me there, Tyler. It was a Mickey Mantle card. I had looked up what a PSA 10 is, and that's basically if you get like a card graded and put on a slab, and it's kind of like hermetically sealed. That same card was sold last year. Last year, that card sold for $102,000.
Wow.
So if Adam held on to that card a little bit longer.
Wow.
In the script, he had two.
Yeah,
he did. That's true.
That's true. Yep.
Wow, the dollar has gone down in value.
Well, the card at the time when she said it's worth $6,000 in today's money, if like if she would say, hey, that's worth $6,000, that means $11,000 to us. And ungraded, that card can still kind of go in that range.
Sure.
But for like the best pristine version of that card, that's pretty
impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial. She and Adam, kind of have some good back and forth and banter, and eventually, Adam convinces her to, hire her to, sell the cards, get some supplies for, the folks and stuff like that. He never really alludes to like what his purposes are. He was instructed by his mom, like, I'm just here on business,
Yep. I'm from out of town. I'm here on business.
Yep. I'm from out of town. I'm here on business. And even as like a, comparison of kind of what, money versus now and then, she says, well, I work for $1,000 a week, and Adam's like, sweet, I'll hire you for 2 weeks, So from today's money, like that's, $3,900 basically, like for those 2 weeks. So not
bad.
Not bad for 2 weeks worth of work. Yeah. We meet, God, I forgot what the gay best friend's name is.
I want to say Troy.
Troy, you're correct.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that joke that they make was really good. I thought it was very clever that you just alluded to.
Yeah,
he's like,
so good.
yeah, and Troy's gay. He's like, good for you.
He's like sincerely happy for him.
He's very
like,
sincere.
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that's another
positive guy here.
Another running joke that they come back to was, basically it's like, always stay happy when he's like running away.
Yeah.
The other thing that while they're meeting and they kind of interrogate Adam a little bit is, he's like, he kind of alludes, he's like, yeah, well, Eve is psychic, and he says, maybe she can say, where I'm from and stuff like that, and they have this like, kind of get to knowing each other moment. And the thing that I felt like I saw the first version of Brendan Fraser kind of being a 12-year-old boy is the Troy leaves to go check his computer, and he goes, he has a computer? right? She goes,
like
yeah.
in the house?
Yeah,
like,
in the house. Yeah. She's like, no, it's in the backyard, right?
Yeah, she's like, of course.
Right.
That part made me laugh because when my dad was in college, he worked with some of the very first computers that took up entire floors of buildings.
Yeah,
for sure.
You know, and had to have like an entire HVAC system to, I mean, like how like a server room is now.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, but for something that like, you know, your smartphone could defeat in like 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure.
And store more memory.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they had, I mean, I don't know the specifics, but they had platters that, you know, were the size of a dinner table, you know, that were 500 megabytes.
Massive cooling systems for them and everything.
That cost $5 million in like 1958.
Yeah.
You know, just crazy.
For sure.
There's one interesting thing I find about the scene that we were just talking about too, when she's doing like the predictions and stuff. And she goes like, am I getting hot or whatever? Or are we getting hot or something like that? And he's like, yep. That's the first time I feel like you see like a different version of Brendan Fraser come through, because he's like the 12-year-old boy the whole time, but right there it's the more serious adult Brendan Fraser that we might be used to from other things at times, and you see it a couple more times as the story progresses. So when I kind of was talking about the story arc earlier, I feel like that's one of the beginnings of it, of him becoming part of this new society. Not only has he found a girl, but he's feeling something with it.
Agreed.
And so you see something different in his face. There's something different in the way he delivers the line than everything else has been. It's not this swell. Swell. It's not that anymore. It's something different.
I agree. When he answers the phone, he's like, "Oh, hot tickety dog," you know. But you're right. His like even his body language, his
later,
mannerisms.
Like skipping ahead a little without giving too much away. Later, when he's talking to his dad, when they're sitting at the table and he's telling him the truth of what happened.
Yes,
it's that later version of Brendan Fraser. It's not the kid anymore. And so we've seen a couple glimpses of it by that point. But now that's what I mean by like the arc happening for him.
Yeah, it's interesting you had that perspective on it, because I more so read it as he's just a 12-year-old boy lying to her still.
Sure.
To me, his arc from 12-year-old boy to manhood was too abrupt, but I can see how they did set it up.
I think what I'm saying is, I think what I'm saying is less of something they intended and something more of Brendan Fraser. Just the way he acts showing through. So like I kind of to piggyback of what you just said, I don't know that it was necessarily something they wanted to be the story arc. It's just something that I kind of see through his acting. Like I saw a little bit, that's when you kind of see the character he plays in The Mummy, or like when George of the Jungle is falling in love with Ursula, and he's got that kind of like, ooh, I'm going to woo her, like swoon her type thing. And you don't see any of that before that, and then you see it. So it's like an acting change that happens within him.
Yeah, fair enough.
More of a Brendan Fraser thing than a Adam thing.
Yeah, they had also mentioned within that scene, we were talking about computers and stuff like that. He's like, well, he's a web designer. Troy's a web designer. And I wonder, you know, what Adam had thought at the time. I was like, oh man, he's never seen the internet before.
Right.
You know, like I wonder like how much that would have blown his mind.
Oh, interesting. Someone who works with spiders.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, without having any context of the internet or what a website is.
Yeah,
he designs webs for what?
Yeah, I wonder if he's heard of Charlotte Webb. If that was like poignant at the time,
right?
Well, I could totally see him faking his way through it, because even in that similar scene, he's like talking about sushi, and he's like, "I love Lucy," you know, just like just kind of plays it off, you know, like totally like a 12-year-old boy like would do. Is like, I'm just gonna fake it till I make it.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Say something that sounds similar.
For sure. So we're gonna jump to the next scene here. We're gonna talk about how Adam, he wants to find a girlfriend, find everything. At this point in time, they had gone through a lot of stuff, gotten a lot of supplies. So they take Adam to the club, and what really also shows through about Adam being like a 12-year-old boy is when they're walking into the club, they're like, act uninterested, you know, act loose. And you can just kind of see Brendan Fraser kind of just like trying to be like a mime. He's like, you know, making different voices or faces, and, you know, just completely like...
Just be yourself. Yeah, that's always good advice.
I feel like the loose version, like when he says be loose, I see a lot of Jim Carrey in what he did right there.
Yeah.
Like especially when he's doing like the Night at the Roxbury thing. You know what I'm talking Like Jim Carrey's skit for that, where he's like, like that's kind of what it reminded me of.
Just some head bobbing.
Yeah, exactly. Super loose, super loose.
I do like the fact that they go to like a... so that way that Adam can shine to like a like a ska bar, like swing bar, I guess I should say, not ska, like a swing bar.
Like a 40s swing revival.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that they, they could basically
plays to his strengths.
Yeah, plays to his strengths. I thought that was like a really nice nod, and like not show that this guy's completely out of depth, that he's semi-competent in certain aspects of his life.
But then everyone they know is there, so it is actually a popular place.
Yeah, which he's like, I think it was like Jason and Jonathan, that he meets. If you pay attention, I think he says Jason.
He says their names back. He does.
He says the name. Yeah, he says the names backwards the second time. So, and they're just like, huh? Okay. I think they're just so like taken aback by this guy.
When did The Mask come out?
94.
I was just gonna say, Tyler. Like, there's like that whole parallel.
There's I was thinking the same thing. There's a lot of, and I was also just kind of thinking about that, and the swing revival thing. I was like, man, all that stuff really wasn't about the same time, wasn't it? Even in those bands too.
Yeah, you had the big band scene in The Mask with the Hey Pachuco song and everything like that.
Right.
It was, once again, another arguably the best scene in a movie where every scene is the best scene.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that, and then this, and then all those other bands that were popular in reality, that were swing revival bands or whatever that genre is called.
Or even that just had elements of that,
yes.
like trumpets being in music that wouldn't normally have it in that time.
Right, kind of a big band sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Which I guess kind of led to the ska idea, so there's definitely a correlation there.
Yeah. He gets to meet his first, I guess, woman that we get to see besides Eve.
Sophie.
Hi, how do you do? I'm Adam Weber.
Adam lives in Alaska.
She turns out to be, quote unquote, like a hussy that Eve doesn't like.
Now that's the story we get of her.
Correct, correct.
From Eve.
Like her biased perspective. That's true.
To me, she seems a little more cultured. I mean, she speaks another language. She was dressed nicely. And
I agree,
so,
yeah.
I don't know. I think Eve might be a little bitter on that one. Who knows? That's another one we might want to see the rest of that story.
Yeah. Well, Troy gave her a hard time too.
Yeah,
this is true.
That's true. But he's also the gay best friend of a girl who doesn't like her.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
That's
like this.
There's layers of this.
Yeah. There's a certain weaponization happening there. Huh?
Yep.
She also uses the 16th century colloquial term, and then they start speaking French together. I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially what they're saying to each other is like, "Oh, you speak French? Yeah. Have you ever been to Paris? Yeah. The city of lights, and like it's also the country of love." And he's like, "Well, I've never had a chance to practice, French with anybody." And she's like, "I got some other things we can practice, right?" And you don't get to see, or there's no subtitles in the movie, but you can kind of see at the end of it, like Adam's like, "Ooh, like okay, like that's never had somebody have a sexual innuendo towards me before."
But at the same time, he doesn't know what a sexual innuendo
you're like,
is.
does he get it? Like,
right?
He doesn't get it.
It seemed like maybe a little bit.
Practice whittling or whatever we're talking about here.
So, one thing that I thought was also intelligent for the movie. There's the song that plays while Adam is dancing with some new friends that he finds there. He actually ends up going out by himself and picking up on some girls, and has a very clever line of like, I seem to have lost my Congressional Medal of Honor, and I've heard that before from other movies and like past stuff. That was like a popular line back in the day from World War II vets and stuff. But the song is called Mr. Zoot Suit, and if you know anything about zoot suits, it's more of a Chicano way of dress. But basically, they're just big, fancy, flashy suits.
Yeah, the big box suits.
Hey,
yeah.
Pachuco.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's kind of like a "Hey, look at me" type of song and suit. So it's perfect for the scene where it's like, "Hey, look at Adam," where he's spotlighted dancing swing with two girls. So I thought that was really great.
This is a movie that has a perfect example of what Not Another Teen Movie was getting at when they say, "Oh, would you ever know that everyone that goes to this school is a professional dancer?"
Right.
And like, because like the two girls that he ends up dancing with, like clearly that was rehearsed, but
right. They were
they had specific moves and like leg flicks that were choreographed and everything. I love when that happens in movies. It's like, this was a once in the lifetime, in the moment thing. But
and that was one of those things where I thought, the movie's not taking itself too serious, just completely absurd.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? You learn those types of moves with your mom?
Yeah, exactly. And like, was your dad the other partner? Like,
and it's like, these are certainly they did have some stuff that was more complex, but there's like a lot of that's the stuff that's new now, and revival stuff and the flips and stuff. I mean, they did do stuff like that, but I mean, it was just so absurd. It was great.
And most likely it was practiced.
Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was great, though.
Yeah, we need to review Not Another Teen Movie next, I guess.
It's another good one.
That's a great one. I love that movie.
Another good one. A lot of classic moments in there that are not only throwbacks, but excellently redone in that movie from a humor standpoint.
For sure.
Yeah. How much do we actually have to, like, how much can have to be unboxed in that film, or how much of it is it on the surface?
Right. Yeah.
I'd say there's a lot of underlines in that one, because
there definitely
it is making fun of,
one line from that scene within like the club thing, though, that me and my sister, because we watched this movie I think originally together, the scene where Eve tells Troy to like buzz off, basically.
You go to the bathroom. What, right here?
Anytime that, family wise, like, where are you going? Like, I have to go to the bathroom.
I have to go to the bathroom. Oh.
So, like, when you had said there's quotes and lines that, like, just the way that they say it or whatever, absolutely. That's my version of what's going on. It's like, makes sense. I have to go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But during the dance scene, this is where Eve starts to get jealous and realizes that she likes Adam. She's
when she's finally got him off her back.
Right, exactly. And it's like the very typical, like, you don't know what you don't have until you lose it type of thing. The will they, won't they within this movie, I think is done pretty well. You can kind of see, even from the beginning, where she tells him, like, hey, don't sell that card because you can get more money from it. You can tell she has a heart of gold from the beginning. She just has been so, I don't want to say damaged, but basically hurt over the years from like different men. And she even says, like, I'm attracted to butts and hair and stuff like that. I really thought that was really interesting, how she just kind of like eventually is like, okay, I'm gonna let my walls down a little bit, and kind of tell him basically that, like, I don't want you seeing these people, or I don't want you to see that girl Sophie, or whatever I think is her name, the girl who speaks French. Right, and where she finally realizes it, gets the courage, is she wants to like drive and go see him, and like she gets scared and falls out of the car, and this is where we have the first aid scene where, to your point, like, he's no longer like that 12-year-old boy. You can kind of see that direct acting choice.
Yep.
And even within the movie, Troy kind of prompts him, is like, she doesn't want a boy, she wants a man.
Yeah.
Yep. I thought that was a very clever scene, and even like exposition within the story to like segue. But even like the scene, like the romantic comedy scene with how they deal with the dynamic of how he cleans up her knee, and like he starts to be more serious, more flirtatious and stuff like that, and she's like relieved, and there's such like a welling of like all this love, and then he like trauma dumps on her.
Never had sex before.
No.
How is that possible?
You better sit back down. In 1962, when the bomb was dropped on Los Angeles, my parents were in our fallout shelter.
It was just like, and she's like, goes back to square one. It was just like, man, boys are dumb. Like, I can't believe I got myself suckered in. And, and he sounds like a crazy person, It's like, well, back in 62, blah, 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 the bomb dropped. And, I just thought that was so unique of like how they just went from great to tragic to like, okay, I need to go now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
The only thing that I really kind of have left is kind of like the wrap up here of kind of the story in general. She realizes that, hey, this is, this guy's on the level. She tries to sell him out to the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And he tells Troy, I hope you always stay happy. He wants the best for Eve. And they attempt to go back into the bunker. And Eve realizing her mistake, she tries to go back for Troy, and they make their way back to the adult bookstore to trying to find Adam. One really fun thing, if you notice during the movie when they're inside the bookstore and they're stomping on the ground trying to find,
that was great.
trying to find Adam looking like a crazy person.
Do you have a basement?
Like, don't know what it's gonna look like.
Right.
Is there a door? Is it under the floor?
Right. Which the guy who works there, I thought was really funny. He like, once again, this is LA.
Yeah, he's like, whatever.
I'm an adult bookstore, like whatever. Like people walk in here, do silly stuff all the
This
time.
is not the weirdest thing he's seen that morning.
Exactly.
No.
His response is, if you want the good stuff, it's up front.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I forgot about that. That is another great line. Oh my god.
If you notice, all of the adult.
Not all of them, just the really racy ones.
Correct. The adult material is all blurred.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you guys picked up on that or noticed that.
It was in the one because I streamed it too.
Yeah.
I noticed that you know, and I don't know. I mean, I wasn't even looking for that. I'm like, oh, what's on the cover of that? But like, it was really obvious. You just really noticed that they had, blurred those out.
And I had through Napster legitimately found a copy. And
you still use that too?
Yeah, dude, I'm the Napster king. But no, it was, I thought it, until Big Bird mentioned it to me, like I thought it was just a version or something that they released on TV or something like that.
Yeah.
What's that movie rated?
What? It was PG-13.
PG-13.
Like,
okay.
There was one F-bomb though, so.
Oh really?
Was there?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
I feel like I remember one too.
At the beginning.
Was it Christopher Walken said it?
No, it was the guy that was.
Oh no,
running,
they were all wholesome. Never mind.
Right.
Yeah.
It was the guy that was running the card shop. And when they were leaving, he said something. I don't remember what.
When
it
he's
was.
like yelling at her or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He said like, "I hope you two have a great effing life" or something like that.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Well, you get 2 F-bombs. At least back then you did. I don't know what you do now.
Yeah.
But in PG-13 movies, you got 2 back then.
Yeah.
If you wanted.
I think I've heard that.
There's an extensive conversation about that in the movie Be Cool.
Do you know if the blurring was theatrical release or was that just when it actually went to the public?
I would guess at a PG-13 that it was probably theatrical as well.
Yeah.
Because anything R, I know they would have just left it in. You see examples of that in plenty of things.
It's
but
so weird that they would just
Makes
film it in
sense.
general.
Yeah. And I, being the physical media guy, I have this movie on DVD and Blu-ray, and I watched it on both versions, and it's the same.
It's blurred.
It's
okay,
blurred
yeah.
in both
Interesting.
versions.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But they go back to the adult bookstore, try to find Adam. The movie trope where they're like, oh my god, and they find each other because he's just randomly walking on the street. They fall in love.
Oh, I loved that scene too because they're driving by, they see him, and then the car is parked nicely. I was like, man, his reaction time is amazing. How he parked that car so fast. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I also like how that they obscured Adam through the telephone booth. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like a pure like walking down the street shot.
Like, is it him? Yeah.
Right. It's like a POV almost from like, hey, like, is that him? And she like you're right. She
it's like we can tell that
him.
it is him, but it's like the illusion of the idea that she might be mistaking someone else for him or something.
Agreed. Yeah.
And it's such an eye roll of a trope, but I don't know. I just thought it was endearing in this movie.
Oh, it totally works.
Yeah, it works very well, yeah.
I mean, right before that, there's also the trope of like him leaving a message on the answering machine for her. Because there's always like in movies that used to contain answering machines, it's like you leave important plot points or you say important things over the answering
Usually some
machine.
artistic shot of the living room or half the kitchen to the living room with the answering machine.
Yeah,
over
or
there.
somebody like staring at the answering machine, like, should I or should I not answer it?
Yep.
Like something like that.
The 97 missed calls on there.
Yes, for sure. But Adam and Eve get together. She meets the parents. She mentions, and I couldn't tell if this was a lie or not, but she tells the mom, I'm from Pasadena.
I couldn't tell either, but the reason I think it's true... Well, the reason I thought it was true is because she kind of makes a weird face when he says it to her.
Yeah.
When he says it needs to be a girl from Pasadena, she's like,
Yeah.
like type thing. It's very subtle.
Don't you remember when they were in the moving truck and he mentions Pasadena, she said a mutant or something like that?
Well, she said, so not a mutant.
Yeah, not a mutant.
So
like
not a mutant.
Like
yeah.
I think she took it like not an Uggo. Yeah. He's like literally meant like not like a mutant.
Yeah.
Because
she wouldn't be making fun of her own kind then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think when Christopher Walken had talked about mutants, he was talking about like people who can like intersex change. I think what he used the term. So that's what Adam is thinking is like literal mutants off the street.
Yeah.
Where she's thinking like a mutant is like,
like a disgusting personality.
Well, exactly.
And back in the 90s, in that time period, a mutant was a common term for that. Like, you would call someone.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
mutant.
I don't think that she would poke fun at if she grew up in Pasadena. I don't think she would poke fun at it unless she's not. She grew up in Pasadena and she got out of Pasadena and she makes fun of it because she used to grow up. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I need to watch it again. The way I'm remembering it was something along the lines of him saying needs to be from Pasadena, and she said so not a mutant. So the way I took it was like not an LA person then to her,
Fair enough.
Yeah, interesting.
Well,
I could be wildly off with that.
No, you're fine. They end up having a meal together, and Adam tells him, "Hey, why don't you lock the bunker for 2 months?" And he ends up building a home for his folks and really taking care of his folks. There's a voiceover, which is another trope for like the ending of movies that I thought worked really well for this movie. Eve, explains like, Adam says that this is how it works. The kids are taken care of by their parents, and then the kids take care of the parents at the end. And that's what Adam does, is he takes care of his parents, builds them the exact same house. So like you said, there's 3 versions of this house within this movie. And Brendan Fraser sits down with his dad, breaks the news. Eve watches Christopher Walken pace out, a potential bunker is what we kind of gather from what's going on.
Right.
But the, movie ends, the story or the song starts to play in the background, and it's Randy Newman. I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but the name of the song is called Political Science, and it's about dropping the bomb and like, geopolitical stuff that was happening at the time. Sure. But once again, it's quirky, uplifting, bouncy music.
Yep.
And our movie comes to a close.
Yeah. John, do you remember when you originally watched it that was Randy Newman?
No, not at all. I don't think I knew who he was until well after Toy Story. Or maybe I learned during Toy Story and then only ever heard him again in Toy Story and like A Bug's Life or whatever it was.
Yeah. Because Toy Story was what, 95 or was it 90?
It got to be right around there.
I think it's 95, yeah.
So like we heard his voice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I didn't see a Blast from the Past in theater. So it must have been like not 2002 or 5 or whatever when I actually saw it.
Well, I think
we knew.
Yeah, the style was different enough that you may not have known.
Oh no, it's full on Randy Newman.
Easily.
Yeah. Like it sounds just like Toy Story, but like dropping bombs. So like, when the credits were rolling, I'm like, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
And see, I recognized his voice. Like, I'm like, it sounds like someone famous, but I didn't make that connection.
Sure.
Well, one thing that I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. One thing I thought about was like, how could you adapt this movie for modern day? And I'll throw it out to you or the audience or whatever. But one thing I thought about, especially if us millennials have gone through, Y2K, the pandemic, 9/11, stuff like that. I thought it would be really interesting if like Y2K happened and like, all of the, all my sensors shut down.
Look at that heat on my surface indicators. Not that. Oh, Lord.
Because we thought the world was going to end and stayed in the bunker and then came out modern day. What new things would be interesting from somebody from, 35 years ago today, like cell phones or something like that?
Yeah, there were versions of mobile phones before Y2K, but it's not what it is now.
Right.
They didn't have cameras in them. They didn't have
a screen on them or anything.
You could do, the 80s, when the Soviet Union was still around or whatever, still use the same plot and just go from the 80s till sometime that's more around now.
For sure.
Even Gulf War type situation stuff, 90s to now would even work in that situation. Y2K, I think, is an interesting one, though, because my mind goes to how would I tell that story? And the concept of the people in the bunker would be completely isolationist away from anything network related because of the implications of what Y2K was. So they might just stay in there by choice because they don't have any communication to the outside world. They didn't build anything analog that would still work or be compatible today. And they don't have anything digital because they were avoiding that because of what Y2K was. So that could be an interesting way to take it.
Yeah.
And the twist is an iPhone accidentally dropped down into the bunker with them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It comes alive.
It's like your mobile phone killed you.
Yeah. You start getting the
Watch
iPhone.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall the other day.
The what is it? Like the iPhone, like the.
Like,
Exactly. Just you start hearing that over and over again.
Exactly.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of reviewing each episode, I would like to go around and just kind of say, hey, where do you think this movie lies in the realm of movies, film, and cinema? For me, I feel like this movie is more or less like a really good film. I don't know if I would say it's cinema, like it's a huge art piece, but it's not a movie for me because it doesn't seem like something that's like, okay, movie, then move on and forgettable. Because of all the details and paying attention to like different stuff that they do and the clever writing, I feel like this is just a really good film.
Stop the bus!
How do you guys feel?
I feel like that's a tough question for me because in a certain aspect, I almost see every movie as all three.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
In that kind of sense, I would almost put it for me, if I was rating it personally, as more of movie.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is all the stuff that we just talked about, all the deep dive stuff, is not necessarily just there on the surface for your average viewer. Like, most people would sit down and enjoy this movie just as much as we did without breaking any of that stuff down. And it's also just so goofy and so weird. And some of those pacing things I was talking about, looking at it nowadays, like even the ending, when he's explaining everything to the dad, it almost seems like the dad's going to get really upset and you're going to have a little mini conflict he has to resolve and like tell him, no, calm down, everything's okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go that way. Those little things like that, where I almost feel like it was filmed slightly differently, kind of just bring it back to the movie side where I'm like, yeah, it's great. Most of my love for it is probably coming from a place of nostalgia more than a lot of what we just talked about, even though everything is awesome and I'm super stoked on it now that I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I hadn't really before when I had ever watched it until I knew we were doing this.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, for me, it's a fun comedy from the 90s. It has all this extra stuff in it, but that's not why I love it necessarily.
No, that's fair. That's completely fair. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, no, I agree. I just thought it was a lot of fun. You know, it's something that you could watch, casually and yeah, very nostalgic.
Yeah, definitely.
For that. It's interesting how that's kind of a joke, the whole movie, but then it ends up being nostalgic for us because of the time period that, it portrays as the modern era there,
Yeah, us growing up in the 90s and everything. It's fun to look back at it
Yeah,
that
it's
way.
just interesting, to view it through that lens. But also, I did notice several times where you thought, man, something's going to happen with it, and then it didn't.
Yeah.
That was I liked that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at with the pacing. Like, not necessarily even pacing might not even be the right word for that aspect of it. It's a hard thing to explain, but
yeah, I know what you mean. I had one of those where I think it was the dad stepped into, maybe it was the mom, but I think it was the dad, and it was when they were all getting ready to go outside, and somebody stepped into the elevator shaft, and just the way that they were looking around.
It's dirty, but seems to be okay.
I'm like, someone's going to get killed.
Sure, yeah. This is about to get dark.
It's a dark comedy.
I don't know why. I don't know why that.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while, a comedy like this will have a scene that you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah, or it just comes out of nowhere.
But they try to make light. But it's still somehow a comedy. They try to make light of it,
yeah.
and it's like it adds like a serious element to the story while still maintaining. It'll still be a comedy the rest of the movie through. But that they'll have some serious scene like that, and I absolutely expected that, and then it didn't happen. Because it's like faking you out. Maybe, but maybe it's just
like, did they even intend to?
That's
or are
what I'm
we
saying.
viewing it through a new lens because of the era we're watching
That's
it?
what I'm
I guess that's a better way to phrase what I've been trying to say the whole time. Like, it worked at the time they did it, but us watching it now, our view of that type of thing has changed so much. Yeah. The movie's a great example of that. It happens multiple times over. At least to me, it did.
Yeah,
but,
I there were a couple times like, and you just now you said at the end where you're like,
We give up. Yeah, that's kind of how it went.
My gosh! Commies are brilliant. You have to hand it to them. No, we didn't drop any bombs. Oh, yeah. Our evil empire has collapsed for us.
Because it looks like he's taking it bad when he says like there was no bomb or anything. He's like,
well, and he kind of
like,
was.
Those Russian, like he's like kind of angry, you know.
And he kind of was.
I was like, this is gonna be a problem.
Like, oh, those communists, you know.
Exactly.
And then,
but then he's kind of happy about it after he thinks about it. But.
And then it was, and then it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
They just well, that's the way he's always thought about them.
That's exactly
that's pretty
what
normal.
I'm talking about. Yeah,
you
There's
know,
really good world building within this movie for sure.
Yeah.
Bill, you have our final word, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Is movie
just one word?
Yeah.
Just it's movie.
Yeah, movie. Is movie, is film, is cinema.
It's hard for me too because you know, I would echo you and John, but I think I lean on what John was saying. We were young when we saw it, so obviously we saw it as a movie. It was funny, it was a comedy, and agreed. I think a lot of people who watch this just go into it as a comedy. As a filmmaker myself, it's hard not to dissect it and turn it into the category of film because they did pour a lot into it. There is, like I said, if it wasn't for my deep dive into the whole Atomic Cafe and what actually went into making this, it would just be a straight up movie to me. But they definitely put more into it than just fart jokes and gay jokes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it is more than just a movie, but at the end of the day, I think for the average viewer, it just does fall into the category of movie leaning film. But yeah,
fair enough.
Or to echo Tyler, one guy dies and it's still a comedy. He gets squished in the elevator, but it's still a comedy.
Well, you have
anybody
scenes,
see
you have
Hitman on Netflix? It kind of goes that way.
You have scenes where somebody gets killed.
The tweaker's about to pull a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop the pass!
You got those movies that are comedies for the first half and then they get super depressing for the second, like Donnie Darko or SLC Punk.
Right.
Like you're just falling off the couch laughing for the first half and then, does it take a turn?
Yeah.
Great movies, though. Fantastic
sure.
movies.
Well, great movies all around. Well, that wraps up our meat and potatoes portion. We're going to take a quick ad. Hope you guys still stick around. We're going to wrap up here real quick and we'll see you soon, okay?
What is the one thing we dread every week? The one thing we wish we didn't have to waste hours of our evenings on? The agonizing act of grocery shopping. We're adults. Why do we have to do chores and shop? Why can't food just exist? I know it's terrible, but this isn't the reality we live in. Why would you navigate the cereal section when you can be out in the world skydiving or turning laps at a racetrack? Do yourself a favor and just don't go to the grocery store. Somehow, someway, your groceries will appear at home. So avoid that stale lit milk cooler and avoid buying groceries at all cost. Welcome to the grown-up world of dealing with groceries.
Hey guys, welcome back. Before we leave, Jen's side, figured we talk about some stuff that that we have watched recently, something that we've read, something in the physical media realm, or just streaming, whatever. Something that you have kind of partaken in. I want to kind of keep us not only, relevant for things that we've watched in the past, but also things that we can recommend that you have just recently watched. Doesn't have to be something brand new. Could be something that you rediscovered. Just something that we can kind of keep things relevant, so to speak. If you want to start us off, John, something that you've been watching recently, reading, something like that.
Sure. So I've been watching read stuff all the time, so it's hard to pick one, but I'll just go with the most recent movie I saw in the theater. I went and caught Moana 2.
Oh, yeah.
Which
I saw that too.
If you're a fan of the first one, I highly recommend the second one. I cannot overstate how much the music sucks compared to the first one.
I thought the same thing.
It was rough at certain times, particularly Maui's whole song. There's something that changes at the end of his song that makes it worth watching, but you know what I'm talking about if you saw it. But the song just has none of the power that You're Welcome had or anything like that. And that's kind of a trend through all the songs in the movie. But the story is phenomenal as far as like being a true continuation of what might happen next due to the first movie.
Yep.
It's not just another movie featuring Moana. It is a continuation of that story in a really well done way. So I like that a lot, and visually it's just absolutely amazing. I
agree.
One thing just a little bit about myself that we'll come to find is I am a massive Tolkien nerd. massive. I even share a birthday with him, just like 97 years apart. But even my Morgoth t-shirt I'm wearing today.
Nice.
But from a reading standpoint, I've just recently found a first edition Silmarillion at a bookshop.
Oh, interesting.
In a glass case and everything. So that was cool. So I picked that up.
That's super cool.
I will have to see if the one that my dad has is a first edition.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That could be exciting. If it's an English first edition, I don't have that yet.
Oh,
I might be
doubt
willing
that.
to buy it. But
Yeah,
this one was the American first edition. But
I doubt that. He's a Tolkien fan.
Sure.
Probably not on the level that you are. But
That's
like,
all right.
But he
it's
read,
a sickness with me, but
but yeah, he's into those. He read the Dunes when they were new.
I just read all those too.
It's just
reading them is why I didn't like the second one as much, but we'll get to that. At some point.
If you met the guy, you just wouldn't guess it. That's why it's funny.
Yeah,
you met this guy, you're like, Tolkien fan?
Yeah, right.
Dune person? I don't know.
It's good stuff. Good writing.
Yeah. Sure. One thing because I recently just watched Moana 2 as well. One thing that I was kind of joking with some coworkers about was the end credit scene with kind of the big bad.
Yeah.
I was like, so now it's the MCU Moana cinematic universe.
Exactly.
Because it looks like Thanos.
I mean, with everything else that Disney's been doing, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah,
with how good the two have been so far.
For sure. Tyler, how about you? What have you been into recently?
I recently rewatched that little HBO miniseries on Chernobyl. You know, that's
I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard that's really good.
It's on another level compared to a lot of filmmaking these days.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow.
And I don't, like my memory's awful. I don't usually go back to stuff. Maybe if somebody said something, I should see that again.
Yeah.
But this one I watched when it was, when it came out, it was like 5 years ago or something.
Yeah, it's a little while now for sure.
But I did the, where you'd get like the streaming service and just watch that one thing and cancel it. Yep. I did that. And I think that was the first, I'm troglodyte. So I think that was the first streaming service I'd ever even used at all.
Yeah.
And because I had heard it was so good.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine has been to Pripyat.
Sure.
So, I was like, well, somebody been there. I know them. Yeah, this sounds really interesting. And it was awesome.
One of the few shows that lives up to the hype around it, like fully.
It really does, though. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Isn't the pacing just anxiety-inducing in that whole show, though?
It's
absolutely.
It's masterful. Yeah.
It's one of those things, and I kind of say this of like The Last of Us 2, where it's probably the best video game I've ever played, but none of it's fun. And like that's kind of how Chernobyl is. Like it's like the best show, one of the best shows. I don't want to say that, but it's one of the best shows I've ever seen. But it's in a way not fun to be watching it because it's so
horrifying.
So accurate.
While watching it, you think you're getting radiation.
Yeah, for real. It's crazy. Yeah,
like they just put. Have you not seen it, Brandon?
I have not.
Like
no.
The emotion in some of the scenes when the guys are volunteering. Like I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen it. If you don't know what happened there, but when they're volunteering, it's like, oh my God, like it hurts you to see what these guys are sacrificing for.
Well, and you know what they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's just
they have an idea, but we know what it actually is going to be.
Yeah, and it's just awful. And
great
so
show.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know, being my physical media soapbox, I know it's something that you can get on physical media.
Yeah.
So that's typically why I don't usually watch shows like that. So I've been waiting for it to go down on Black Friday for the 4K.
Yeah.
So
do they offer that in something that you can get physical media for?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
So that's what I've been waiting on. So
very good.
That's why
it's worth it.
Behind the curveball. Bill, how about you? What have you been into?
Oh man. Our D&D group knows it in Ignazian because I've been like yelling at people for the past handful of years, but I just finished our Arcane Season 2.
Oh my God. Nice.
I never played League of Legends at all. I don't know anything about the MMO. But as far as storytelling goes, like do yourselves a favor and watch these 2 seasons. To be fair, the second season, they wrap it up in 9 episodes, and it's not like they do it in a bad way. It's just you want more, and so after 9 episodes, it just feels like it was just.
Well, you want more after season 1 too. It's
so
the
good.
animation. Oh my God,
the animation is done by Fortiche, which is a French 3D 2D animating like studio, and from start to finish, seasons 1 and 2 is just art.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's art
I haven't seen season 2 yet.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't seen it yet? Oh my God.
Yeah. We're gonna go back and rewatch season 1 again, and then go into season 2. So
get a big old box of tissues, and then also when you're done, go down the deep dive of all of the not conspiracy theories, but like go down the deep dive of like the breaking apart of scenes and stuff like that.
Sure.
It's such a for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a show where they 3D 2D animate things. And so like almost every single cell is traditionally 2D animated, but in a 3D world. So for instance, if there's an explosion that happens, there will be a single frame or 2 single frames where they'll put like a ruin or an animation that subconsciously it hits you, but you don't see it unless you frame by frame it.
It's like the Fight Club thing.
Everything,
with
everything
Tyler
in it
Durden
is
popping
like
up the whole time. Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah, like art wise, it's beautiful. Script wise, it's beautiful. Music wise, it is beautiful. It's not for everybody, but I recommend it for everybody because it is just Fritish did an amazing job, and I think the creators, Christian, whatever his last name, I think they tried to start getting it off the ground back in like 2015 or something like that. So it has been like a decade love letter of his just creation or whatever. It's beautiful.
Something to kind of add to the animation that you're talking about there. It's probably the most impressive animation I've ever seen, to see that there's actually weight that goes along with like impacts. So like when somebody punches somebody, you see the weight of them swinging their arm, and you see how that hits and everything. I've never seen it done this well in an animated thing before.
Yeah, I mean, it's not live action, so they're allowed to actually show the connection. But the way they to your credit, like people fall off something, and in Hollywood, someone hits their neck, or like John Wick falls down to the scaffolding, and you're like, that looks like it hurts, but it's John Wick, he's going to bounce back. When characters like hit their neck or hit something, you feel it. Yeah, like it makes you the way they actually do impacts is like,
it's crazy.
It's a beautiful show, not just amazing, just beautiful.
Cool. For myself, movie-wise, we talked about Moana. As people may know, me personally, I work at a movie theater as my second job. So I've been watching a lot of kind of movies. I saw Gladiator 2, which I unfortunately don't recommend. Heretic, if you get a chance to see that, was another movie I saw. That movie was amazing on so many levels. I just recently for the first time watched Time Machine. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie.
I haven't.
Oh, dude,
I know what you're
talking
about, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, with Guy Pearce.
Brandon, when did you watch that? Because I literally just watched that like 4 or 5 days ago.
Probably about the same time. So
what the heck, dude? Are we connected?
Wormhole Time Machine, that one together.
Exactly. You guys made a plan for this in the future.
Yeah.
Whoa, weird.
But this is kind of a good point for a segue here. If you follow us on our social medias, which one I would highly, highly recommend that you follow us on is Letterboxd. Letterboxd, I am the person who's currently running that for our group. Basically, anytime that I watch a movie, I will write a review for it, so you can kind of keep up and kind of see what movies we as a group potentially in the future could be watching together, or you can kind of see what I have been watching, see modern movies, past movies. I do a whole gambit of stuff, but I write kind of small little blurbs, about 3 or 4 sentences about the movies, but you can kind of see my reaction at least to those movies. So if you want to keep up with us, please follow us on Letterboxd. On Letterboxd, we're at MFCPod. So if you look for us there, that's also going to be linked below for us. You can follow us also on our YouTube channel. You're going to see the link below for that. And if you're watching us, hey, you don't have to follow us. You're already here, right? We're going to be on YouTube Music, so you can just hear the audio version of us. We're going to be on Spotify. We're going to be on Apple Music, things like that. Please follow us on our Facebook page, all that good stuff. All of the links for everything are going to be below in the descriptions below. So that is going to be our show today, gents. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you guys coming down and spending the time and hanging out.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a blast from the past.
I had fun. Yeah,
having you guys here. But yeah, thanks for joining us today, and thank you guys for coming in and watching and listening wherever you're at. But as always, enjoy Movies, Film, Cinema. Take care. That's podcast.
Sweet.